On today's amazing show, you're going to hear me say amazing way too many times because I was so excited talking to our guest. We're going to talk about The Deer Hunter, Close Encounters, that famous scene in Marathon Man that everybody talks about, working with Alfred Hitchcock, and of course, hanging out with Burt Reynolds. Just a little bit of business before we start. There may be a curse word here or there in this episode, so please listen responsibly. Make sure to check out our website, theop.io, especially the breakdown where operators talk about everything that goes into the making of a shot, and read the musings for discussions about everything from quick tips to larger concepts behind operating. I may or may not take a couple of breaks during this episode, but I promise you none of them will be longer than 22 seconds. Finally, if you are enjoying the podcast, please follow us, like us, talk about us, and share us with your friends. So grab a beverage, sit back, and enjoy the op. Thanks for listening.
Lock it up, nice and quiet, and let's roll.
Rolling. Victor 30 Echo, take 2.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Mark.
And camera set. And action.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Op, the podcast where we talk about operating and the art of visual storytelling. I am your host, Dave Comides, and we are actually here today at the Panavision Woodland Hills Theater, which they have graciously allowed me to use because it sounds better than my bedroom. So today I'm really, really excited because we have an amazing guest, Nick McLean Sr., who was like sort of the operator on everything. I'll just give you a little rundown of the highlights. These are just some of the highlights, by the way. Cheech and Chong's next movie, which I just think is hilarious because it's hilarious. Being There, The Rose, The Deer Hunter, Heaven Can Wait, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Looking for Mr. Goodbar, Marathon Man, Funny Lady, the list goes on and on. And as an assistant, just because I think this is notable, he was a camera assistant on the Sugarland Express, which of course was Steven Spielberg's first theatrical movie. He'd done some stuff before that, but that was his first movie. So cannot wait to hear everything he has to say. Nick, thank you so much for being here today.
It's a pleasure.
This is like, I'm so excited. I can't wait to ask you tons and tons of questions.
Great.
You were a camera operator. You were in the business for how many years?
I got in the business in 1966. My first day was on the Iron Horse. And then I got, I think, just 1 or 2 days. And then you had to have 30 days to get in the union.
Okay.
And then the next year I got 1 day. And then the following year I got my 30 days. So
Okay.
maybe I got in the union 1969.
Back then, this was 659.
Correct.
It was the West Coast
Correct.
local. But how did you get a day if you weren't in the union? Like there wasn't anybody else available and they called you?
Correct.
Okay.
My stepfather was a director of photography. And he was doing the Iron Horse. He introduced me to some people at Columbia. And when everybody was working,
Yeah.
then you could get on.
I got
So
you.
I got 1 day on. Or I think I got like 10 days my first year.
Okay.
1 day my second year.
So it accrued year to year until you
It
had
didn't
to.
accrue. You
Oh,
had to do it in a year. So then I thought I was screwed. Oh, this is an interesting story. I got a friend of mine who I made a camera operator later. He had a movie going to somewhere and got me on it. And the union didn't check. But in the time, there was a Gerald McLean, G. McLean. My first name was George.
Okay.
So when the list came out, they thought I was Gerald McLean.
Yeah.
I got my 30 days. I called the union. I said, you got to accept me now. And that's how I got in the union.
So I just want to make sure that I have this right because this same sort of thing happened with John Toll. You're not worried at this point about the union finding out that you got in under less than honest
God,
circumstances.
no. I could care less.
I don't want them coming in and dragging you away.
What they told me when I got in the union, and I forget the guy's name,
What year was this to you, or ballpark?
69.
And how old were you?
Well, I'm 82 now.
Okay.
I'm an old man.
I would not have guessed that you were 82.
Thank you. It's very nice of you. But when I got in the union, the guy that swore me in said, I want you to know nobody has made so much money knowing so little. I never forget that line.
This was probably, what, the president of the local at the
Yes.
time? Or do you remember who it was?
Jerry somebody.
Jerry somebody. I'll look
Yeah,
it up. That's
right.
great.
Right.
I love it. Okay, so and who is your stepfather?
Fred Jackman Sr., who was a director and a cinematographer.
Wow.
And my grandfather was Fred Jackman Sr., who was the third or the first president of the ASC.
Wow.
And here's a quick story. The reason I never joined the ASC
Yeah.
is because my grandfather was a gambler. He lost the treasury and going to Santa Anita of the ASC. So my stepfather was an ASC member. They kicked him out.
They're not happy about that.
So when they asked me to join, probably 10 times, I said, if it's not good enough for my family, forget it. So I used to go, because I played football at USC, I used to go Nick McLean, not ASC. I would go USC, which they didn't like at all.
All right. Well, there you go. So tell me how. So you got into. That's how you got into the industry.
Correct.
And then you eventually worked your way up to First Day Seeing, obviously.
I was working at Universal, and every night you go in and check the list, or they'd send it out to the set if you were working, and tell you which stage to go to the next day. You're like a daily deal.
So it was the studio system, and you just went where? Wow.
Exactly.
Were you basically employed by the studio, and they just said you go here today, you go there today?
No.
Oh.
Well, I guess I was.
Yeah.
I guess you would say.
Interesting.
And then all of a sudden, 3 features came out, and one was with Hitchcock, which I really wanted real bad, and one was in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Okay.
And luckily, I got the one in Santa Fe, New Mexico, as the second. And Vilmos Zsigmond was the first. It was his first big movie as in the Union.
What movie was that?
Red Sky at Morning was the picture that.
Oh, the Vilmos one.
And nobody's seen it.
Okay.
And
So
it's
Western?
Yeah,
Yeah.
in Santa Fe. Well, kind of a Western.
Yeah.
But it was in Santa Fe. All you have to do to be a hero there is push the button, because
That's beautiful.
every night, they have the great.
What was Vilmos? Were you impressed by him?
He could barely speak English.
Really?
And the first assistant he didn't like, so he moved me up to the first assistant.
Okay.
And then at the end of that, he says, I just got offered another movie, a little movie up in Canada. Would you go with me on that? And it was it's called Presbyterian Church Rager at the time, but it was Warren Beatty, and God, I can't think of the name of that either now. But anyways, we were up in Canada for 6 months. It was.
But that's how it works, right?
Yeah.
Even back then, it's like
Yeah.
you like someone, you can be around them for 16
Right,
hours a day,
right,
and you go,
right.
come with me next time.
Yeah,
right?
Zsigmond and I got along real well, and then at one point I told Zsigmond I didn't want to be an assistant anymore.
Yeah.
And he always operated his own camera. I don't know whether you know about that stuff.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there were a lot of people.
It was
some
illegal,
people-
but they
some
did
people
it
still
anyway.
did. Yeah, but yeah.
And then he said, well, why don't you become my operator? And I said, because I wouldn't be an operator,
Yeah.
He always had
Oh,
a standby.
yeah. I gotcha.
And he said, no, you'll operate every shot. I swear to God.
Yeah.
So I
Really?
I moved up to operator. The first movie was The Girl from Petrovka, which we did in Austria, which was great.
Oh, wow.
And then it went on from there.
Well, I want to hear all of that, but if you have a Hitchcock story, I'm not going to meet
Okay.
many people who have a Hitchcock story.
I was
so-
an operator. I was a real hot operator at
Okay.
one time.
Yeah.
So I get a call. They fired a friend of mine, and I won't mention his name.
That's fine.
Hitchcock.
Yeah.
So I took the job, and in those days you had to wear a suit, not a suit, but a coat and a tie, which was
Love
great.
it. That's great.
So I got there. I did the day's work on an insert card and stuff, and the last shot of the day
Yeah.
was a car coming down towards me and going off a cliff.
Okay.
And I looked around for the cameras, one camera.
And this is an actual, honest to goodness car driving over a cliff. You're
Yeah.
saying it's okay.
Yeah. It's in the movie. The movie was, Bruce Dern was in it. I can't remember the name. Anyways, so I'm sitting there getting ready to shoot this car, and I'm thinking, no extra cameras. I'm it.
And I'm assuming nobody's in the car, like it's rolling on its own.
Yeah, it was somebody
There's
in
a
the car.
stuntman, a stunt person in the
Maybe
car.
it was just a small
Yeah.
drop.
Okay,
Anyway,
but whatever. Yeah.
So the reason my friend got fired was going from Hitchcock to Lenny South, who was the DP, something was being lost. So the camera operator wasn't getting the right information.
I gotcha.
So every shot that was up, I would go over and listen. Hitchcock was sitting in this big Lincoln Continental, and I remember his stomach was just about hitting his
Up
chin.
to his chin.
And I would listen. I'd listen exactly, what he'd say.
He would direct from inside the
Yes.
car because it was more comfortable or something, I'm
Probably,
assuming?
yeah. So anyways, when we get ready to do the stunt, I hear him put a chair right next to my camera.
I love it.
And then I hear this shuffling. and we're getting ready to roll, and Hitchcock says to me, "I assume your machine is functioning properly." So I said, "Yes, sir," and I turned it on, and the car went off the cliff. He could tell whether you had it or not.
And there's no video assist, right?
No,
It's
God,
just-
no,
yeah,
way
yeah.
before that.
Love it.
It went off, and all of a sudden, up and away he went. That was my...
What did you interact with him any more than that, or is it
No,
pretty much
I
kept to
only...
himself?
I took the job because I wanted to work with him.
Yeah, who wouldn't?
And I think I was on it 2 days, and that was the
Amazing.
last.
Hey,
So,
that's
yeah.
pretty cool, though. That's
great,
That's
yeah.
really cool. So you became Vilmosh's operator.
I
but-
would say I did 10 movies
Wow.
with Zygmunt, which was, the Deer Hunter, the Rose, God, it just went on and on, and we just
Close Encounters.
Close and yeah, that's right.
There's a
Close
movie.
Encounters, Sugarland.
Sugarland, yeah. But Sugarland, you were a first AC?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So actually, so I can sort of keep this in chronicle because I could ask you questions
Right.
about every one of these movies.
Right.
So when you were working on Sugarland, this Steven Spielberg's first
Correct.
Theatrical feature.
Right.
He'd done, I think he'd done a couple of TV movies.
He did
and
dual, yeah.
and some TV
Which he won the
episodes.
award for when he was like 26.
He won which award for?
Best director in Europe, they gave it to
Really?
him. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So you did Sugarland Express. He's in his 20s, right? I don't
26.
know. 26. Now you work with Spielberg. He's an auteur. He's Steven Spielberg. He's da-da-da-da. Back then, could you see the seeds of what he would become? I mean,
Spielberg?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How so?
He was so different. I mean, the way he hired people, the way he casted actors, he casted real people, and it would put up with them missing their lines just to get their accent or to get this,
Wow.
to get that. But he was just different.
So you could tell that this was a change in directing. This was a change.
He
in,
was different,
Wow.
and we were on Sugarland, God, 4 months probably,
Yeah.
down in Texas.
Okay.
And you could tell it was a real good movie. It didn't do too good, but
Now you've worked on. I mean, I listed some of them, not all of them. You've
Mm-hmm.
worked on massive movies. When you're working on those movies, can you tell that they're going to be good?
probably, yeah, I would say so.
How often did you work on something where you're like, this is going to be the best thing ever, and then it's horrible?
I don't remember.
You remember?
I don't remember doing that.
All right, so that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
So you become Vilmosh's operator. You work on all
Correct.
these things. Were you pretty much going Vilmosh because he was just back to back? Because he was.
I
hot.
was, and then I somehow, and I don't. When I finished Close Encounters, I got a call from Billy Fraker to do The Exorcist 2.
Okay.
So that's how I kind of transitioned to Fraker.
Yep.
And then Fraker and I, he knew I was a great operator, but we didn't get along at all. And he fired me twice.
Did he?
He fired me on Heaven Can Wait. I saw that was on the list. Have
Yeah.
you ever been fired? But do you know the name Jordan Cronenworth?
Sure.
Well, Jordan was a very, very good friend of mine.
Yeah.
And Jordan once told me, he says, "You're not a great cinematographer till you've been fired from every major studio in Hollywood."
I love
and
that.
I damn near got there.
I love that. My thing is always, if you haven't been fired, you haven't been in the business long enough.
I've been
Everybody
fired
does.
many times.
And let me ask you a question. Look, when you get passed into your working on Close Encounters and the Deer Hunter and whatever,
Right.
you get fired, you probably realize, like, okay, it happens. When you were younger, the first time it happened, when you were still, a greener operator, how did that affect you, or how did you deal with
I
it?
think it would have affected me. I never got fired for bad operating.
Okay.
I just, in fact, you want to hear the story how Fraker fired me?
I totally. If you
On
wanna
Heaven
share.
Can Wait,
Yeah.
which I'd been on 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
We came back. Did you ever see the movie?
I did, and Heaven Can Wait went on like 9-10 months. Heaven Can Wait is Michael Cimino?
No. No. Warren Beatty and Buck Henry directed it.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of. I can't think of the movie. I'm thinking, but anyway, yes.
You'll love this. We came back onto the set, and then the huge airplane was there that they go to heaven on.
Yeah.
And there's all dry ice everywhere. And
Okay.
they
It was on stage. I'm assuming.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and we'd just gotten back. So we got it all lit, ready to go, and they wanted to wrap. And I said, I was on the crane. I said, "Billy, let me just run off 200 or 300 feet, and we'll look at this tomorrow and see if we can need to fix anything." Nicky, great idea. So anyways, I got to the stage in the morning, and I called the lab, and they said it's going to be shown so-and-so. So I walked down there, and I walked back. It wasn't there, so I walked back. And so Billy came in, but he was hungover as hell. So he said, I said, where are they showing the dailies? He said, how in the fuck should I know? Just like that. And it made me mad. So I walked back down to see the dailies. I'm coming back, and Billy and the head of Paramount or wherever we were, and a key grip, Art Brooker, was there. And he said to me, Nicky, where are they showing the dailies? And I just said, how in the fuck should I know? He said, just get in your car and get out of here. And it was a protest by Warren Beatty. He got real pissed off.
That you were being fired.
Yeah, called me at home, so on and so forth. But I was already on my way. Zygmunt and I owned part of an island in the San Juans up off the coast of Washington. I said, screw it. I'm going to go up there and just kick back, drink wine, enjoy my life, knowing I'll never work in Hollywood again.
Yeah. Okay.
And I get up there, and the first day I'm there, I hear that we had a radio telephone, and this caretaker came walking down, said, Nick, I just heard from Zygmunt from Thailand. Get on the next plane for the Deer Hunter.
Oh, my God. Wow. So basically, like, it's failing from success to success.
Yes,
to success.
Yeah.
So let me back up. You jump from camera assistant to operator, but it sounds like you were with someone who probably liked you and wanted to protect you and wanted you to succeed.
Yes.
But what? This is a long time ago, so I understand. What was that transition like? What did you find were the hardest parts about jumping from being an assistant to a camera operator?
Well, actually, the physical part and the agility of moving the camera at the right time and knowing where to go, and I can remember I missed a couple, people popping up,
stand-ups and whatnot.
Yes,
yeah, okay.
And but you get used to that after a while. But once a couple of weeks, and I remember. In fact, Mike Genie was my assistant when we came back on Petrovka. I remember almost every shot that day.
Really?
To this day.
On that first day?
Yeah, the first day coming back. Well, we were in Austria for a long time.
Yep.
And then every time there was a shot that I don't think I could make, Zygmunt would just take over. So when I got back, it was illegal.
Yeah.
And
so you were sort of protected a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And what about quote unquote running the set? I mean, was that like, and dealing with the first AD and dealing with the actors, or let me ask you a question, because maybe this is naive. As an camera operator now, I'm very involved with that.
Yes.
It may not have been like that back in the day. I don't know.
It pretty much was.
It
yeah.
was.
It
Okay.
was. Especially with European directors, they actually dealt with the camera operator more than the DP.
For the English system.
And I did several with John Schlesinger, who he and I were just buddies. You know.
Yeah.
And I did the biggest bad movie he ever did, the Honky Tonk Freeway it was called.
I vaguely remember this. I don't know if I saw it.
It didn't last very
long.
long.
The name.
It didn't.
So you're working with Zygmunt, and like I said, he obviously protected you a little bit. Did you have any experiences early on where you jumped on a movie where the DP did not protect you?
I did on when I was working. I went back and worked for Universal occasionally, and there was you know who the DP was? I think Frank Thackeray, who I'd worked with his dad, who was a big DP in the back. I did a year of Ironside as an operator.
Ironside,
I did, and I keep looking at. I get them back every day.
Wow!
But I haven't seen one that I remember anyway.
Back then, just to interject. Was it more of a legacy situation where so and so was the son of so and so?
There was a lot of that.
It was in the family.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
And was it hard to get in if you weren't in that crowd?
I don't know. It probably was, but I was, because my stepfather was a DP.
Yeah, So you have to have some amazing stories about the Deer Hunter.
The Deer Hunter was unbelievable. I remember somebody got sick. A lot of people were getting dysentery and stuff like that. So when I was on the island of Zygmunt and I place, he called me to come over there.
This is up in Washington, you're saying? Yeah,
the San Juan Islands. And when I got there, I think there was only like a month left. Oh. But it was the toughest month. It was like, and Cimino was with us all the time, and Cimino was just,
tough guy.
He was horrible.
But let me ask you a question, but talented? I mean,
of course.
I'm assuming, but you never know who makes things. And
he
gets things.
Definitely was talented.
Yeah.
But I remember one time we were out on a skiff on the River Kwai, and he fell off the boat, and everybody just turned their back. That's the kind of guy that.
Yeah.
And another time, we had this big. There was we had if you saw the movie, we had a flamethrower. A guy had a flamethrower.
Oh, yeah.
And we had the guy rigged that the flame was coming at to catch on fire, and it didn't work. And Cimino said, okay, we're going to be back out here tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. Well, the sun didn't come up until 7 or something like that. So we're all sitting around saying what a jerk he was. And he was right out there with us. He was sitting on the chair and heard everything.
So
Sorry.
You said you said there's a month left. So meaning, was Vilmos operating himself and then decided I need
No,
someone, or
he had.
they replaced
I think
someone?
I replaced
Okay.
the guy from. There was a guy from New York there.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And so did you shoot the famous Russian roulette scene?
Of course.
Wow.
I was there. Yes.
And was that as intense as I mean?
Absolutely. And we stayed in this little motel.
Wait, sorry. This was Thailand, right?
Yes.
Okay, and this was 1973, 4?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay.
A little town called Kachanabre, which was right where the bridge on the River Kwai was. In fact, the bridge on the River Kwai was still there, but it wasn't like you remember. It was like a cement bridge.
Okay.
But we'd go on they call them longboats. They're these long
Sorry, you're saying the actual one or the one from the movie that they used?
No, the one from the movie was gone.
It was gone. So the actual bridge.
Yeah,
on
the actual,
okay.
yeah. But we'd go on these boats. You could get about 5 or 6 people in them.
Yeah.
And they have a Toyota engine, and they start the engine, and it was a direct drive to a propeller, and they put that in the water and take you up.
They just take you up.
Yeah.
Old school.
And at about 10 o'clock, there would be a barge with food and beer on it. And they didn't want you to drink any water. All the beer you could
because
drink.
of dysentery, yeah.
Which was great. And all the marijuana you'd want in those days, it was, illegal.
It's amazing anything got on film.
But that scene, that was an incredible scene. I think it was the day I got there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
Wow.
it was something.
Was that the only scene that day kind of thing? I mean, it took.
I can't remember. We
Yeah.
probably took a couple days to do it because
Wow,
it was
that's-
pretty wild. And then they
It's
got him
intense
out,
to watch. I
got
can't
him out in
imagine
the pit. Yeah.
having
yeah.
my eye on
Well, that's
matches.
Cimino too. Cimino was a pretty talented guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I disliked him so much that the next movie, which is the big movie, God,
The Cimino movie?
Yeah.
That's the one I was thinking of before, and I was thinking it's Heaven's Gate, but it's not.
it is Heaven's Gate.
Oh, it's Heaven's Gate. I'm sorry.
Well,
that's right.
I was at Zygmunt and my island.
Heaven Can Wait,
which was-
Heaven's Gate. That's why I'm confusing it.
Which is 200 miles away from it, and they needed operators real bad.
Yeah.
And I refused it. I said, no, I'm not
Not
going
gonna do it.
Yeah, I have no interest in
Wow.
working with the guy again.
Wow, interesting.
You know?
So you're in Thailand. You're shooting. What is it? A week before you saw dailies? I mean, how did that work?
You didn't see him.
You didn't just someone from the States called up and said
Yeah.
everything looks good, or you got
Right.
a negative report or
Right.
something?
Right.
Interesting.
I
So-
never saw any dailies there.
Wow. So actually backing up a little bit, or I don't know if it's backing up, but talk to me about going to dailies as an operator back then, because that's not something I had the tail end of that. I hit the tail end of that. I used to go to dailies. I actually miss it personally because it was kind of great in the sort of social aspect. It was also kind of terrifying because I was a younger operator and I hoped to God I wasn't going to get fired. But what was that like on these big
It
movies?
was absolutely incredible. Especially, I got hooked up with Burt Reynolds.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of helicopter stuff. And Burt Reynolds, for dailies at night, would have a chef, a bar. It was absolutely amazing. And the first stuff I did for Burt Reynolds was aerials at the opening of Sharky's Machine. The last shot, and Burt went with us about 3 or 4 times, but we had to follow the elevator up until it stopped at like the 80th floor. And then when the doors opened, that was the cut.
Oh, you mean this is like on the outside of a hotel, on the side of the hotel?
Peachtree
where-
Plaza, which is round.
Yeah. Okay.
So we would
Gotcha.
follow. We did it about 3 or 4 times. The wind was blowing like crazy.
Oh, boy.
So yeah. So Bert says, "I don't want to do this anymore."
Yeah.
And I had an incredible pilot that died on Runaway Train, but Ricky Hawley. But we did it about the 8th time we finally got it.
Are you handheld in there?
No, I had a mount.
A mount.
But there wasn't enough light to use a zoom lens, so I had to use like a flat lane. So we had to be real close.
Yeah.
You know, our rotor blades were
Yeah.
were about 10 feet from the building.
Oh my
It's
God.
pretty scary.
Yeah. That's amazing. It's, you say about the helicopter, it's like, I think your generation compared to my generation was probably even a little more so, but there's all this stupid stuff that we did and we do that
And now it's all drones. I don't think they do
no,
helicopters anymore.
there's really not much reason for it anymore because the drones can get. I mean,
it's
the
amazing.
drones can go up and carry one of the actual cameras now. So
It's amazing.
and they can do more. I mean,
Yeah.
what they can do is more impressive.
Yeah.
So there's no
Yeah.
question about it.
Yeah.
So was early on when you would Vilmos and on those early movies when you would show up for dailies was there a little bit of fear until you sort of saw stuff?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And at one time, Vilmos told me, he says, "You're ruining my work."
Really?
He said, "Yeah," because we would decide on a composition, an opening composition.
And again, just a reminder to people: there was no video assist back then.
None.
So he would show you the frame he wanted, and then
Yeah.
he would assume that's what you're
Yeah,
getting.
right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I didn't, or I'd do the wrong move or something like that. But yeah, he told me one time, "You're ruining my work. You're ruining my work," which was upsetting. But
Sure.
I didn't get fired.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. As an operator now, one of the things that bothers me is that there is this whole, especially with digital, there's this whole group of people who are watching a monitor who actually see more and better than I do, to be
Yep.
perfectly honest,
Of course.
because they've got some massive monitor.
Yeah.
So when I make a change or when I make a mistake that I think is a mistake, there's a little bit about well, they've seen it, so I'm sure they're okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll usually bring it up, hey, were you okay? And if it's something serious. But if it's minor, I don't. But back then, they were completely relying on you to say we got it.
100%. When they yelled cut, the director looked directly at you, and not the DP. And it was just between you.
It's great.
It was great. It really was.
And were there times where you change something or whatever, and you're sort of like, you know what, I'm just gonna hope that this is okay because I
No,
thought
I
it
usually
worked.
had made them do it again.
Yeah,
Just said,
no, but I mean, where you made a slight change, it was your decision.
of course, of course. In fact, Fraker used to tell me, I used to creep. I used to get set, and then if there's something in the picture that was moved, I could creep with it.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you've ever done that.
Sure,
but
we all have.
But Fraker would say, "God damn it, Nicky, you're creeping again. You're creeping again."
Yep.
But it would get to a better composition.
Yeah.
I get over. If I didn't make it to that composition, I could creep over and get to that.
Yeah. I work with a really good DP who's a very good friend of mine. I don't know if you ever ran into him, John Lindley. He shot Field of Dreams.
I know that name,
John's
but I never met
fantastic.
him.
But I once landed a frame and it wasn't exactly what I wanted.
Oh, really?
It was a long scene and over about a minute I probably moved the frame, just an eighth of an inch.
Yeah.
And I don't, I'm thinking to myself, nobody knows and whatever. And he came over afterwards and he goes, "You realize I know what you're doing there, right?" I said, "Oh God." And he goes, "No, it's fine. You were right, but I just want to let you know you're not getting away with it."
Wow.
Was there ever a time where you went into dailies and you were just shocked, like it wasn't what you remembered, or you're shocked at what you did, or?
I'll tell you a funny story. On The Swashbuckler, which we did the first part at Universal, there was a shot, and I think I was the B camera operator, and there was a shot of these guy and a gal way up. God, they had to be 40 feet in the air, and they were going to come down, and they were going to go through this kind of a canvas and go into a bunch of fruit or something like that. It was just a great stunt.
Yeah.
So, and it was on a Friday, which, you always want to make everything real good on a Friday. So I was there, and I took them about the first 10 feet, and for some reason, I to this day, I don't know why, I went like this. I panned off them, and I went down to the deal, and they came through the top
Yeah.
and landed. I went, "Oh, man, I'm dead. I'm going to be fired on this one for sure."
Yeah.
Jimmy Goldstone was the director who did quite a few things. Pretty good guy. So I thought, well, and I remember at dailies on Monday,
Yeah.
I was waiting for the shot, of
Sure.
course. And here we go, and I'm thinking, this is it. As soon as they see this,
Like
they got to fire me. I'm done. So it happens, and sure as shit, I did pan off him. I got down,
Yeah.
and Jimmy Goldstone says, "Great, Nick, you got me 2 shots. I got one at the top, and I got one at the bottom." And I went, "Oh."
Yeah, there you go. Dodge the bullet again.
Yep.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yep.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yes.
Tell me something amazing. There's got to be great stories about it.
But yeah, we started off at the big mountain Devil's Post Pile or whatever it is.
I'll tell you something just as an aside.
Yes.
Several years ago, we moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. I got a motorhome and drove my family cross country because I realized my kids have only seen the coast, and I wanted to show them. And we stayed at Devil's Tower at a literally like the KOA campground. It was
really?
here,
Wow.
and it's in the background. And the reason we stayed there was because every night they could or whatever, they had an outdoor movie, and they showed Close Encounters with Devil's Tower in the background.
Well, on my book, the cover of my book,
Yeah.
I'm on top of a car had a Panavision, with the eyepiece up like this, doing a 2-shot of the people inside, and I'm tied to the car. But the Devil's Tower is in the background.
Wow.
There, so, yeah.
Wow.
Pretty.
Well, you're tied to the car because it's a moving shot.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they did things back
Yes.
then. That would not fly anymore.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't, would it?
That's amazing. Oh, sorry, Close Encounters. So, what was that like to shoot? I mean,
it was great. It was something new, and it was Steven Spielberg, so you knew you were doing the best.
Single camera?
I was
part?
the A camera operator, but I think sometimes we had a couple.
But not all the time. I mean,
No,
yeah.
and a lot of the time we were 65 millimeter
Really?
or 70 millimeter.
Oh,
And then when we got to Mobile, Alabama, they built that big set, the landing site.
yeah.
And we were kind of christening it. And Spielberg, he said, we got, 2 more months or whatever it is to shoot out here. And Spielberg picks up a bottle of champagne and throws it out. I thought he's gone nuts. But he was christening
it. Oh, that's cool. Oh, because you were going to be here for the rest of the movie kind of thing?
Right. And he didn't drink either, but he's not a drinker or anything like that. But what a great guy.
Really?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, he produced the Goonies.
Yeah, sure.
And he made me be in the Goonies. So because we couldn't get actors in, we had a big rainstorm up in Astoria.
Okay.
So he said, Nick, you got to do this part. And in this shot, at the opening of the Goonies, I played the plumber. I was under the sink. But in the shot, we had a TV. We had to balance the light from inside to outside because there's a car chase going on outside.
Yeah.
I had all kinds of stuff to do and shouldn't have been in the shot. But, and I'm sure he'll help you out too, my operator in those days was Mike O'Shea, who was the greatest operator of all times. I think we did 10. He was my operator.
He's a great guy. He's on my list of people to talk to.
Oh, God, he's the best.
He's fantastic.
He is absolutely the best. And he won an Emmy for as a DP.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, on I forget what it was, but yeah, he's
Great
the
guy.
best.
Yeah. So he was the operator and you were in the scene?
Yeah, well, he was the operator on the whole Goonies,
Yeah.
And,
I see.
But
so you weren't
because-
on the Goonies? No, you were on the. Oh, you were. I'm sorry, you were the director of photography.
Yeah, but I was in it also as an actor.
No, now I understand.
Yeah.
And you didn't decide to hang up the DP shingle and become an actor?
No,
after
I
that?
did not. But I still get a residual about every 4 months. I get
That's great. You
$100
get
or something.
Yeah, I was going to say like the 25 cents because
Right.
it played in New
Right.
Guinea or something like that. Oh, that's great. Was Close Encounters, was that the biggest thing you'd ever worked on?
At the time, it was
Scope-wise, I mean.
Yeah. It was huge. It was just, and like I say, there was we had a new motion control camera, which was never ever been used before.
Uh-huh.
And in fact, it was so sensitive. They could probably do it on a computer like this now, but the computer was the size of that door.
Wow.
There and that high.
Like in a truck somewhere or
Yeah,
something. Yeah,
right.
And what scenes did you use that for?
All the stuff, with the spaceships coming through.
So you could shoot the live action stuff, and then they could recreate.
They could
it
drop
and put
that
the
right.
thing in.
And then when the spaceship actually came down, we had like the top 10 feet of it, and then they put the rest in.
I got you digitally.
Right.
That's amazing.
Right. It was amazing.
What was that the first sort of big digital effects movie you
It
worked
was.
on?
I think it was.
And was it completely? I mean, it's hard for me to put my head in that space because look, the problems that I have now are, I worked on a Marvel thing a little while ago, and it's all green screen, and they're
Right.
like, tilt up and see the monster, and it's
Right.
like you tilt up and they're like, no, it's bigger than that, and you're like, well, where is? I mean, and of course, it's a big green screen, so you have no idea
Right.
of where anything is. But so to me, that's not overwhelming, but that's frustrating. But back then, that must have been completely overwhelming.
Absolutely.
And then did you just have the effects guys who were look, I know none of this makes sense, but
Yeah,
what I
we
need you
had
to
him-
see is this. And
We had a guy named Doug Trumbull
Doug Trumbull, sure,
who was with us.
huge visual
Yeah,
effects guy.
right.
Yeah.
And he's the guy that kind of set that whole thing up. And one night, you'll love this story. Spielberg and I, we were or Zygmunt was lighting something, and we went out on the tarmac, and we were trying to see flying saucers. You know, we're trying to, looking up for UFOs. And I started talking to him about when the mothership comes over.
Yeah.
And here's the difference between Spielberg and me.
Okay.
I expected the mothership to be the size of this room,
Yes.
or bigger.
Sure.
And I said, Stephen, how big is it going to be? He says, 1 mile across. And it was. If you look at the movie, when it comes in,
It's massive.
yeah, it's massive. So that's Stephen.
Well, look, the guy's he's got a vision, right? There's no question about that. I don't think we can argue.
He sure
with
is.
that. And you probably couldn't, other than the unless it was the motion control, you couldn't move the camera at all in any of that, right?
No, that was it. You
Yeah.
could move the camera.
You could.
That was the first
No,
time.
with the motion control you could, but if it wasn't motion control,
Right.
like you couldn't pan in a shot or something like that. It had to be
right.
lock-offs.
Yeah.
That must have been a very interesting.
And it was 70 millimeter, I believe.
Yeah.
It was either 65 or 70.
something,
I forget
yeah,
what it was.
larger
yeah.
format so they
Right.
could do what they do.
Right.
It's amazing because now, when did you get out of the business? When did you retire? What year?
I did the last 100 episodes as Friends. I started doing sitcoms.
Is it 100 episodes of Friends? I was on ER across the lot.
Yeah, right.
I remember when didn't you guys, there was something where maybe the 100 episodes sold and people got Miatas or something. There was some.
Yeah, they were supposed to give us that.
Oh, okay.
But, those kids, the last 2 years were making $1 million per show.
Which now is nothing, but
Yeah.
right.
But
Crazy.
come on.
Crazy.
And then I stayed on. They asked me to stay on to do the spinoff of Joey, which
okay.
went for 2 years,
Yeah.
and it was horrible. And then
work.
I went to do something else just because of my crew.
Yeah.
And this producer gal, she's like 25 years old, started giving me some crap. And I just went over, got my meters, that's when I retired.
So that was film, though, right? Still. So I guess
it was.
My question was, did you ever work with digital? It sounds like you probably did.
The last year of Friends, we went digital.
Yeah, that was that point. ER tried it too.
I had a
And,
DIT
yeah.
sitting right in the room with me.
Was it the Genesis, or do you remember what cameras?
No, we had
Was it-
Panavision cameras, I
Yeah,
believe.
it was probably the Panavision Genesis, or before that they had the F900 that they sort of.
I can't remember.
Anyway, yeah.
In fact,
yeah.
I ask my son about that every once in a while. I say, "What do you guys do now with it? They
well,
got a chip or something?"
No, and the thing is, what I was going to say was, did you ever work with Norman Parker?
No.
Okay, Norman Parker is an assistant Stephen Poster's assistant for a long time. He's a very good friend of mine.
Poster was our second unit DP on Close Encounters.
On Close Encounters, exactly.
That's where we brought him out on there.
Sure. So I was bringing up Norman because I try to explain to him what it's like on set now, and
Right.
it's just completely changed. And the reason where I was going with this was from a visual effects point of view. I remember at first it was like, okay, everything has to have trackers, and you got to we could move the camera, but we had to have. At first we couldn't, but you had to have the angle of the camera and the height of the camera
Right,
and the lens
right.
of the camera. And now they just sort of go, nah, you don't need it. Just do whatever you want. We'll
Right,
figure it out. My
right.
wife's actually a visual effects artist, so she's on the computer doing all that stuff.
Oh, really?
And it's just incredible. It's incredible what they can do.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible. I'll tell you a story. She's in her office in the house because she works at home.
This is your wife.
My wife,
Okay, right.
yeah, and she actually was she was started out doing hand animation at Disney. Then she did digital animation at
Wow.
Disney. Now she does. I don't even know how she does what she does, but she's amazing. But she'll come in. She'll come in and she'll go, look at this shot. And I'm looking at the shot. And I'm like, what? And she goes, you see all the crew there? I have to take the crew out. Why do I have to take the crew? I said, well, I don't know. I didn't,
Right.
But you wouldn't have the crew there. You would catch that. And I said,
Right.
yeah. But she goes, well, why do I? Well, I didn't do the shot. It wasn't me. Like, she'll get upset at me. And I'm like, I didn't have anything to do with it. So now whenever I'm on set and people are like, no, they'll just take it out digitally. I go, no. You guys move
Yeah.
those chairs.
That's a good idea.
I can't deal with
Right.
it. But yeah. So and Close Encounters must have been months and months and months and months. I mean.
We were, I would say, 5 months, something
Wow.
like that.
Wow.
And in Mobile, it was 100 degrees,
Yeah.
in the daytime, maybe more. And so we decided for the last month or maybe 2 months, we worked 6 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Just because of the heat.
And it was horrible.
Ugh.
It was just,
Wow.
and we had air conditioner in there, but as soon
Still,
as,
yeah.
it didn't work.
And back then, air conditioning wasn't what it is now.
Right.
I got to ask you a very specific question about Marathon Man, which
Yes.
you can probably guess. I'm a Steadicam
Yes.
operator. So,
Right.
Marathon Man was probably like maybe the third or fourth movie.
I always thought it was the first, but
yeah.
maybe not.
No, the first was actually the
I
Woody
know.
Guthrie story.
Correct. You're right.
Bound
Yeah.
for Glory. It was
Yeah.
that step off, and everybody
Right.
kind of lost their minds.
And
with
Haskell
actually.
did it, yeah.
Yep. I have to check. I think Marathon Man might have been the second one.
Right.
But was that the first time you'd seen Steadicam? Had you
Yes, and Garrett pulled up They'd already done shots around of Dustin in New York.
Yeah.
But we used it for something, and I remember it was in his trunk, and there was no cases or anything.
I've heard
he just
this
pulled
story
out this.
from other people too.
Really?
Well, because I think there weren't cases for a couple of shows.
Yeah, there wasn't.
Yeah.
And he just kind of put it together, and I thought, Jesus.
Was it mind-boggling?
I knew it was going to revolutionize the business. If it was good, if it worked.
And from what I'm hearing from you, pulling it out of his trunk, and this, did it seem? What was there a feeling on set of like, who the hell is this kid? And what?
Kinda.
Yeah.
Kinda. But
and then when you saw it, was it just? I mean, it was
great.
It was impressive.
Great.
Now the story that I heard, which I think maybe I heard from Garrett, was that he was doing a shot in Marathon Man where he had to go across the street and step up on a step or something like that. And back then, it was one of the first Steadicams. I think it was called the Steadicam model. It was called the 35. I forget. But it had the the spindle. The camera was like locked on there, and the spindle went down the post or something like that. And the monitor was up high. And he apparently stumbled, and someone said to him, if you put the monitor down low,
interesting.
you could actually watch. And so I didn't know if you remembered
I don't
that
remember
at all.
that.
Okay.
That sounds like in New York they might have done that.
It could have been. It could have been. So you shot the interrogation scene with pulling the teeth.
Absolutely. And Conrad Hall was the DP.
Conrad
was
Hall.
my hero. Always has been my hero.
One of the single greatest cinematographers of all time.
Incredible.
By the way, and it's funny, I talk to younger people and they ask me about this and that and the other, and when they ask about that, about what a great Searching for Bobby Fischer. To me, it's a great movie, but it is one of the single most beautiful movies I've ever seen.
Every day on Marathon Man, Conrad and I would have lunch.
Yeah.
And we would go to Daly's first and then go to lunch.
Okay.
And at lunchtime, and we'd have a couple glasses of wine, Conrad would say, "I've lost it." He said, "That stuff looked like shit." He said, I can't do this anymore.
So basically what you're saying is one of the most talented cinematographers in the world who still had it was doubting himself
absolutely
constantly. That's actually, by the way, if nothing else comes out of this for younger operators.
Really?
To me, well, here's the thing. Like, I don't know. It sounds like you were a very different situation. It was a different time. But like for me, when I first started, and my big break was really on ER, and I was the A-camera Steadicam operator. And Steadicam I could do, but A-camera I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing. And so you're constantly questioning yourself.
So that
and
you
doubting.
go back and forth from a regular camera to a Steadicam.
And I was the only camera. I mean, there's only one camera on the show.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
I see.
Back
I
then
thought
it was
you were
one
like,
camera, so I was the camera operator for when I was there.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, and it was a single camera show.
Wow.
So it was trial by and here's the thing: the first 2 days or 2 weeks, maybe even, I didn't really even like put a lot of stuff on the truck because I just assumed I was going to get fired. So going back to Marathon Man. First of all, you used to have wine at lunch.
Oh God, yes.
What like
everybody? I mean,
but like officially with catering or
no. We'd go to Oblat's. There was a little restaurant. Right
okay, you go out for
of the
lunch
gate,
and have some wine. I got you.
And Conrad loved to tell stories. You know. And in fact, because of that, Princess and I had our honeymoon in Tahiti. And of course, that's where Conrad's from, and he's got his own little island there. And I went. His dad wrote. Was it Mutiny on the Bounty?
Yes, no, I think you're right. I think you're right.
And we went to visit his house when he was a kid.
Oh, and that's how his connection is.
In Papeete.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Did everybody own an island back then?
Just me and Zig.
Okay.
And I sold my portion of the island. I don't know whether Zygmunt did.
Yeah.
There was like 20 people in on the deal. We bought 51 acres and put 8 real bitchin' cabins on it and everything.
That's amazing.
For nothing. I think.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I think it was like 150 grand or something like that.
That's great. So tell me about that infamous scene in shooting the infamous scene in Marathon Men where he's interrogating him and pulling the teeth and.
I'll never forget it. It was, and Sir Laurence Olivier and I, believe it or not, became real good friends.
Really?
Yeah, and it was just mind-boggling, because actually they cut it out of the deal, but they rigged it so when he was drilling the tooth, there would be smoke coming out of it.
Oh boy!
And they
because
they showed it somewhere, and people were walking out.
It was just too. I mean, that scene is hard enough to watch as it is.
Yeah.
That would have been even more.
Is
so.
it safe?
Yeah. It's very, very safe. No, it's not safe. It's not safe at all.
Right.
Now you know the story about that scene between Olivier and Dustin Hoffman, and Dustin Hoffman being method and staying up for 3 days.
I was there.
Wait, but is that a true story?
Yes.
Can you tell that story?
Yes. It was when Roy Scheider came in and died, and Dustin was going crazy how to play it and so on and so forth. And he did stay up 2 or 3 nights before that and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And he didn't know how to play the scene, and Sir Lawrence was sitting there getting pissed off. And finally he said, "Why don't you just try acting?"
So it is true.
It's true.
You were in the room when he said that.
I was in the room to say it. And also I was in a taxi cab in Dublin.
Yeah.
And we were going along, and this guy found out that we were, knew that stuff, and I was on Marathon Man. He asked me the story. A taxi cab driver.
It's a classic story.
I was there.
Right?
It happened.
And I always assume, there's part of me that assumed that it's apocryphal, and there's part of me that assumed that no, there's no, because that was old school acting meets new school acting, right? And
exactly.
I'm sure to someone like Olivier, that was like, what are you doing?
Years later, when I was working with Schlesinger again, Sir Lawrence Olivier came on the set and called me by my first name, and people were just going, "Whoa!"
Really?
And because we'd gotten to be buddies on
that's great. What was he like as an individual?
Great guy, just a great guy, great guy. And the first day I worked on Marathon Man, I didn't know who he was, and the first shot was taking him off this airplane.
Was he not that big of an actor yet?
No, he was huge.
He was.
He was the biggest.
Okay, that's what I
thought.
But
I didn't know. I
just
wasn't
didn't-
into
okay.
that. Yeah.
All right.
In fact, when I did a deal with the Rolling Stones, I didn't know who Mick Jagger was. I didn't, and I said, "Which one's Mick?"
Let's spend the night. Let's
Correct.
spend the night together. Yeah.
Right, with Caleb.
Yeah.
Which I did several with Caleb.
Wow.
Yeah.
You didn't know who Mick Jagger, but you
I
knew who the
did
Rolling
not.
Stones were.
I don't know. I wasn't
Really?
into that stuff.
Wow, that's amazing.
I barely knew who the Beatles were. I was a football. I was
Okay,
I was
gotcha.
a sports.
Well, so let me ask you a question. Like, here's the thing. I want to hear all these stories, but I also there's a little bit of me that wants to get some nuggets for people who are operating, and me, by the way. How do you approach working with actors with hard? Look, Laurence Olivier and Dustin Hoffman are a perfect example. You had to work with both of them as an operator. One of them is an old school,
right?
You do that, and the other one is the new breed, which probably was sort of at that point was that I mean, were people used to people acting that way at that point?
Yeah, you just had to kind of feel it out, whatever they were.
Yeah.
You just had to get along. And I usually got along with people real well. So if I needed them to move or get up or do this or that, I'd just approach them. And if it looked like they weren't going to do it, I'd have to do it with the camera. It's just
so basically you kind of assess whether you're going to get the help from them or not. And
exactly.
Then if you don't, like I'm gonna go out on a limb here and guess that in that scene Dustin Hoffman didn't want to know I got to lean to the left to get my light or
That's
whatever.
Correct.
So
right.
you basically just try to work around that
right.
out of respect for that
right.
process.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And another question that I have, and maybe this is my assumption. Now, between digital and also, I think lighting has changed or whatever, people tend to light spaces and let the actors play in them. And back then, I sort of get the feeling that it was a little bit more like, no, this area is lit and that area is not lit.
Yeah.
So was there less ability to change things on the fly as an operator? If
you knew what you were doing, you could do it. You could move the camera, or you could ask them to move, or and they would pretty much know if they missed their light or stuff like that.
But what about within the shot? Was there ever sort of that jazz of like changing something within it, or was it pretty much no, we're set and we'll fix it on the next one?
I would think what I would do if they missed their mark and stuff like that, I'd kind of assess it and realize, if it was going to work when you saw it, I would just go with it.
Gotcha.
If not, I'd make them, I'd stop and make them redo it.
Yeah. And so, can you tell me about working with dolly grips?
I had 2 or 3 of them. In fact, that was one of my deals on 2 or 3 of my movies. I took my dolly grip with me.
Great. Who was it?
Timmy. I can't think of Timmy's last name. I can't think of anybody's name.
That's okay.
Timmy Ryan was my dolly grip.
So you can.
And he was a great storyteller. But he had the flow, He
what made him good?
He could just go with, he could cheat. He could go like me on the camera. He would just, be smooth, know when to start, when to stop.
You just knew.
The ups and downs were great. It was just great. Yeah. I took him with me on Being There and several other movies.
And this was long, long before what's now, which is they've got a monitor that they look at. This was he just had to be sighting along the camera and know the frame.
Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah, in fact, a great story, Spielberg wanted to be an operator.
Really?
And I didn't want him to operate.
You mean he wanted to operate shots on his movies?
Sometimes, yeah. So the first time he wanted to operate, it was on Close Encounters.
Yeah.
And we had the PSR then. We might have had the Panaflex. Maybe it was a Panaflex. But it was a little truck, and it was going to go, a little model truck was going to go to. So Spielberg got behind the camera like that. I just held the magazine.
So he's on the wheels, and you're
he's starting
forcing
to go, and the truck goes. So I told him, I said, if somebody was on that camera that knew what they were doing, we wouldn't have to redo it. And he just got up.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But he operates everything now.
Yeah.
And it's probably a pretty good operator too, I'll bet.
Yeah. I mean, Mitch Dubin is his A camera operator. I
Uh-huh.
should ask Mitch whether he jumps on there or not. He probably does.
I think he does.
Do you think it's a control thing, or do you think it's just he likes to be in the process?
He's just Mr. Movies,
Yeah, he
That's
is.
his whole life.
Yeah.
It was, he's incredible. It's like Caleb. Did you ever work with Caleb or no?
I never worked with. I missed a lot of those guys, unfortunately.
He's probably retired now.
Yeah.
But he followed the guy that did The Godfather. What the hell was this?
Gordon Willis.
Gordon Willis.
Yeah.
And Caleb would go to 8 movies on the weekend, just to check lighting and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But he was a total into the movies, which
Yeah.
I wasn't. I mean,
Yeah.
I was, but I did okay, but I
Yeah.
wasn't like those guys.
Gotcha. I know what you're saying. Yeah, I was actually just talking to a friend of mine, Buzz Moyer, who's a great Steadicam operator.
I've heard that name.
A camera Steadicam operator, and he does B camera Steadicam on the Spielberg movies now with Mitch.
Uh-huh.
And he was saying to me, he said the first movie he did was The Post, and he did this big Steadicam shot, and he said, at the end he pulls up and he holds a lock off, and he happens to notice that Spielberg's standing next to him at the end holding an iPad, which is now how you watch a lot of the shots, and he's watching it, and he's just got this big smile on his face, and it was great because Buzz was like, it was so great because it was just like, he was just this guy who really loves movies, and he likes, and he's happy that he's watching it, and I thought that was, still at this point.
I have to tell you about my Steadicam shot, and my only Steadicam shot.
What year is this?
No idea, but it was. But
70s
Garrett was not
though?
available. Yeah, 70s
Okay.
on The Exorcist too.
Okay.
And Borman came to me and said,
This is John Borman, the director?
Yes, we want to go down these steps.
The steps?
Steps.
Like, but I mean the Exorcist steps, like those
No,
steps?
no.
Oh, okay.
No, the steps
Like
inside.
those are steep.
And there's a little river, and then he said, I want you to come up with the Steadicam.
Okay.
And we're going to mat, so you have to be steady. We're going to mat a tiger coming out of his mouth.
Oh my God.
So he said, do you think
You've never put a Steadicam on
Never.
before this? Okay.
He said, do you think you could do it? I said, are you kidding me? Piece of cake. So I put the Steadicam on, and the door he had to go through was about this wide, just wide enough for my shoulders.
Yeah.
And then it was straight down 10 steps.
Yeah.
And then, so when I went through, I put the Steadicam out, and of course, then I couldn't get it back.
Yeah.
And I went all the way
So
down.
it was getting away from you, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
So it gets into the thing where it starts getting away, and you try to get it, and it gets away, and
Exactly.
you're running after it.
So I got down there, and then I brought it back up, and of course the thing was shaking like shit. So the next day at Daly's, I said, "How was it?" Borman said, "Unusable." So we got Garrett back to do it when he was available.
That's fantastic.
So I took Garrett over there, and he said, "Nick, it's an impossible shot.
Yeah.
You can't get through this and throw that out."
At least you felt a little better, right?
He said, exactly.
Yeah.
He said, what I will do is I'll have him make this doorway this wide. So I didn't know.
That's amazing.
But that's the last time I ever put the Steadicam on.
Smart.
Yeah. I don't think I could be a very good Steadicam operator.
Look, there's some people who can and some people who can't.
Right.
It's just, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. Well, there's a little bit, but not much. Did you ever work with Ted Churchill?
I knew him very well.
You did?
But didn't he pass away?
He did.
Yeah.
It's probably going on 15 years now. or
Yeah, I
something like
used
that.
him back in Florida a lot for
Really?
Burt Reynolds stuff.
Wow.
He was from Florida, wasn't he?
I don't know. I know he lived in New York. I don't know where he was from originally.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I understand in his backyard somewhere, he had a whole, like a place that he would run with the Steadicam.
Oh, I guarantee he probably did.
Yeah.
You know, there's the saying that Garrett invented the Steadicam and Ted invented the operator.
Yeah.
He was a personality.
Yeah, he was great.
Yeah, you have any good Ted stories?
I don't remember any. No.
Okay.
But
He was-
I remember sometimes when I'd get a Steadicam in there, and the Steadicam operator would come in with the director there and take it, and I'd be watching him. He'd be doing a 360.
Yeah.
And he'd say, "What do you think?" I would say, "Okay, you light it."
Yeah.
See what
They get themselves into
Right.
trouble with the DP.
Right.
What about Being There? What was
Being There was probably my favorite movie I ever done. Ever.
really? Why?
Ever.
Why is that?
Just because of Hal Ashby was my second favorite director of all times.
Yeah.
Caleb wasn't a big shot at the time. He was kind of coming up.
Okay.
Great cat. Peter Sellers and I actually became good friends.
Really?
And it was, we did the first part in Washington, D.C. I'd never been there before.
Yeah.
So I got to see a couple of weeks of Washington, D.C., and then we were in the Asheville, the Biltmore Mansion.
Oh, in Asheville, North Carolina.
Yes.
Beautiful. I didn't realize that's where that is.
That's where it was.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And, the driveway from the street to the steps is 3 miles.
Oh, my God.
3 miles through there. So
wow.
I knew every inch of that building.
That's really... you were there for months or?
Oh, at least, yeah.
That's
months
really cool.
or more.
Wow.
And the funny thing about that, Caleb had a condo right below me, and his 2 little gals out that are big movie stars now, they were like 6 and 8 years old.
Oh, okay.
And when it would snow, they'd get the suitcase and have a sled down the hill and stuff like that. It's amazing to see that. Yeah.
That's
but
great.
it was just a great movie. You could tell. You could tell.
Is that one of those movies that working on it, you could go, this is going to be a classic?
I don't really know until the end, but
yeah.
There's more. In fact, I was doing an interview in Dublin, and it's like the Howard Stern of Dublin. He was going along, and he had known about a few of the movies I did, and they slipped him a piece of paper that I did being there. The guy went nuts. He
really?
said, "What?
Look, it's a great movie,
classic,
and it stands the test of time. There's no question about it.
It's great. Have you seen it?
Yeah. I mean, what's funny is now that we're talking about it, I should see it again because I haven't seen it in a long time. But I guarantee you, it holds up. It's Chauncey Gardner.
Oh,
it's
great.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, the author was with us who committed suicide later.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Jerzy Kaczynski was his name. Yeah.
Oh, Jerzy Kaczynski.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Maybe I did know that. Anyway.
Yeah.
But so you've mentioned now twice that you've become good friends with these fairly big actors.
I'm actually a pretty friendly people and get along with people.
Obviously, but a lot of actors are they're a little.
There are a few.
They've got some, but even the ones who don't, I think they kind of have their guard up to people because everybody wants something, right?
You're right.
So what do you? I mean, you obviously have a way with actors, and I'm sure that works on set.
Not all, but most. And like you say, some are just jerks.
Well, but they're like everybody else,
right?
I mean, there's some people who are, and some people
right.
aren't. But I mean, do you think it's because you just treat them like people? Or,
I do, yeah. I treat them well and expect to be treated well back. So,
that's interesting that you said that because I think I think there's something to that, which is, I think there's something to saying, you know what, look, you've got a tough job and you're in front of the camera and I have all deference for that, but I also have a tough job and we all deserve respect.
And when you say that, it might piss them off, but it might not too. So you don't know what.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
it's exactly right.
So you just kind of have to play it by ear.
Did you ever work with, and you don't have to name them, any actors that it was just absolutely impossible to work
Warren was Beatty, and I did 2 or 3 things with him.
Yeah.
But he was just a jerk. He would, honest to God, on 2 or 3 of the movies, we would start betting on what we'd get to take. 30 to 40, 40 to 50.
You are kidding
And Julie
me.
Christie, she would say, "Warren, you're such an asshole."
Because he's a perfectionist?
Yes. Or he thought he didn't get it right.
Yeah.
In fact, on McCabe and Mrs. Miller, that was the name that I couldn't think of.
Oh, yeah. You were an assistant on that, or you were?
I was an operator. I ended up as an operator. I did like the C camera or something.
Gotcha. And that
was in Canada.
That was Vilmos, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
But there was a scene, it was a Friday night, and we had the weekends off, but we started the scene at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
And the scene was this. Warren Beatty was drunk. He was in a hot tub, and his arm falls off the thing, and it splashes up, and he wakes up. That's the scene.
That's the whole thing?
That's the scene.
Okay.
Midnight.
Really?
Midnight.
How many takes?
Forever. Maybe 100.
But could you...
Altman left. Altman said after take 10, he says, "I got what I need. See you guys." And he left.
And then Beatty was basically directing it. So, and let me ask you this. Could you actually sense a difference from one take to the next?
No.
Do you think that he could sense something, or was it just that he couldn't find what
I don't
he was,
know. He would get out and do push-ups, and he just had a huge ego.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Back to camera operating, just because I should ask you some of these things, although I could get lost in these stories. These stories are fantastic.
They are.
What do you think the difference between a good operator and a great operator is?
I think, well, then a great operator would be somebody that gets along with everybody, that's very coordinated, that knows when to move and when not to move. Mm-hmm. And a regular operator was just make the moves.
Make the moves.
But if you kind of got into it, got into the movie, knew what was going on, knew what the dialogue is,
Yeah.
Know when you can cheat, when you can't cheat.
Yeah.
That would be the difference to me.
No, that's great. And you used to work with assistants who were next to the camera, right?
Yes.
You know where assistants are now?
I think they're in the next room or
They're
something.
in another room a lot of times. And the
Jeez.
interesting thing that I don't know,
Seriously.
and you came from assisting to operating, there had to be an unbelievable, I mean, while I'm saying this, I know the answer to it, but I want to hear your take on it. There had to be something in the fact that since you were sitting on the dolly and you knew that physically the dolly was moving, you just learned how cameras moved, and you knew that the operator was panning and this and that. And there had to be so much of that you must have internally just understood without even knowing you understood.
That could have been. Yeah,
and I have this big fear now that's all, it's not a fear, it's a reality, that's all gone because they don't have that input. The other thing that they don't hear is, like, you used to, as an assistant, you used to sit and listen to the dolly grip and the camera operator talk all the time, right? All that stuff.
Right.
So it's anyway. Did you do a lot of shows where you were the A camera operator and there was a B camera operator, or were they mostly?
I think so. Yeah, I think on a lot of them that. We found out you could work a lot quicker with two cameras.
And what do you, as an A camera operator, what do you expect from a B camera operator? What makes a good B camera operator?
I think just knowing his job and staying in his own department and helping me and.
Do you expect them to check in with you on, hey,
yes,
what do you think of this?
Of course,
what do you think of that?
Yeah.
And if they have a shot to pitch,
if it was good, I'd go for it.
But better to go through you before going to the DP to make sure they're not stepping on toes?
Right.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you were the DP on Friends.
I was.
For 100 episodes?
100 episodes.
And you got nominated for a couple Emmys?
I got
for that?
3, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I didn't get them. I got nominated. Should have won for one of them.
You know what? The thing that I always say about those things is, to me, everybody says this, but the nomination is what's key, because at the end of the day, you have 5 things, and it's sort of like my friend says, it's like the dog show.
Yeah.
That schnauzer is a better dog than that poodle. I mean, at the end, you know, that's amazing. And what's the difference between that was a 4-camera sitcom show?
4-camera, yeah.
What's the difference between you, an operator on these big movies where you were the A camera operator, and one of these sitcom operators?
Well, you can. You don't have to be a great operator to be a sitcom operator.
Okay.
There's, and the lighting isn't great. You know, I mean, there's A B, C, D cameras, and what's front light for this camera is backlight for this camera. So, unless the director or the producers come to you and say, look, we want this specifically, I'd say, okay, let's do it with one camera, and I'll light it the way I'd light it
I got you.
in a movie.
Yeah.
And the producers always back me. We had great producers on it.
Sure. Did you ever have a situation where you were on a show and the DP and the director weren't playing well together, and they were coming up and going, no, do this, and the other one's coming up and saying, no, do this?
Yes.
What do you do?
I just usually do what the director wanted.
Yeah.
And well, it depends what my relationship with the DP was, too.
Sure.
If the DP was a jerk,
Well, let's say though, clearly if you like one and you don't like the other, that's where you're going. You know where your next job's coming from.
Right.
But let's say you like both of them, but they're just not.
I would probably make my own choice and just see what was the right thing for me to do. And just get in there and do it.
How involved were you in designing shots back then, or
as a DP?
When you were operating.
A little bit. Depend on the DP, how much he trusted me. I would,
How about with Vilmos?
Vilmos pretty much, he wanted his certain, it's actually where I learned composition from him. Yeah. And so it would, he would pretty well give you the opening composition and the end composition. Yeah. And like I told you, a few times I didn't get it. He told me I was ruining his business.
And you just do that with what? With a viewfinder, director's viewfinder or something like that?
I would do it on the shot. And I think most of the time, towards the end we had video, so he could tell what I was doing.
Yeah, once you had video. So gearing towards newer operators, because you were talking about composition, when you're composing a shot, what are the things that you used to think about?
Well, the way Vilmos, he in the scene, he always wanted something very, very dark and something very, very light. And if there was a big something to compose on, it was pretty obvious. Yeah. But if you gave the camera to 10 different operators, they would and just say, give me an opening. They'd be different probably.
Yeah.
So it's just like what's in your brain, for what looks good.
I was going to say, so is it the kind of thing where you just find and it happens to look right to you? You just sort of know?
Exactly.
Was that there when you started operating, or did you achieve?
I think most of my composition was from working with Zygmunt all those years.
Yeah.
And I think I ended up, which isn't a bad thing to have.
It's not a bad person to learn from.
Right. And I did. I ran.
Yeah.
And you're talking about being nominated for an Emmy. Zygmunt and I got nominated the same year. He got nominated for a TV deal, he said. And we showed up and we were almost sitting, across from each other.
Yeah.
And it was almost embarrassing to be. And all of a sudden he didn't get it.
Because you're saying, like, here's this guy who's
this big cinematographer, and he as soon as he didn't win, he was gone. I looked over to see, and I couldn't blame him.
Seat's empty. Wow. If you had an idea of the shot that was different than what the DP or the director were coming up with, how did you?
Depend who the director was. When I did a lot with Burt Reynolds, who was a very good director.
Yeah.
But I would always go to him, and I would say, "What do you think about this?"
Yeah.
And he would tell me what he thought. But 90% of the time he'd say, "Do it. Let's see what happens."
Gotcha. So he gave you
and
lessons.
He was just a great. We didn't get into Burt Reynolds much, but he was one of my best buddies.
Yeah.
One of my best friends. He made me a DP.
Yeah. And what was the first
That's a
thing?
good story.
Yeah.
Okay, we're in Sharky's Machine.
Okay. You had worked on shows with him as an operator, I'm assuming.
Yes.
You knew him? Okay.
Yes. But we're on Sharky's Machine. We're doing a 1,000-millimeter lens across this thing to an apartment where the hookers were in, stuff like that. So, Zygmunt did Deliverance.
Yep.
So Burt was sitting next to me, and we were talking about Deliverance and Zygmunt, how great he was, so on and so forth. And Burt got up and started to walk out of the room, and he turned around and he said, "Well, I'm going to make you a DP." And he walked out. And at the time, Princess and I were together.
Okay.
And, she knew Burt 10 times better than I did because of Sally.
Oh, that's right, because of Sally.
And so I went back to the room at night and I said, he said he's going to make me a DP. And she said, well, he's not much of a liar.
Yeah.
About 6 months later, I got a script at my house to move up on a feature.
What movie?
Stroker Ace.
Stroker Ace.
And Lonnie was in it, and he was dating Lonnie at the time.
Anderson.
He might have been married to her. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyways, then about a week later, I got a note to shoot a test on Lonnie.
Yeah.
Well, they weren't testing me. I mean, they weren't testing Lonnie. They were testing me.
They were testing you. Sure.
But I had the best gaffer in Hollywood.
Who was that?
Gary Holt, who tragically had a bad fall, and he was actually ready to be one of the biggest DPs in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And he hit his head on something, and he's alive still, but he's kind of not all there.
That's so sad.
Just sad, a sad deal. But so the test came back, and I got the movie.
Yeah.
In fact, Mike Genie was on it with me.
Was he your operator?
No, I think he was an assistant.
Assistant?
But I remember I was so new that I would send Mike to go to, talk to the lab in the morning.
Yeah.
And I'd watch him coming back to see if he had a smile on his face or a frown on his face.
You mean as the DP, you couldn't deal with going
I
to see
didn't have
yourself?
time to go
You
up,
didn't have time.
but
okay.
so I'd send Mike because he'd call the lab.
Yeah.
And I would, depending on what his frame of mind when he came back.
Sure.
And that movie I could shoot now with my eyes closed. It was, 90% exterior,
Oh, okay.
and maybe a few sets, very few sets. But it was. But then I went from picture to picture to picture after that.
What other movies did you do with him? Did you shoot for him?
I did Whorehouse, I know.
Okay.
But I think I was the operator on that because Fraker was that.
How was Dolly Parton?
Yeah, she was great.
Yeah,
she was absolutely.
She seems wonderful.
Great.
She's like one of my favorite people.
Absolutely.
I never worked with her, but
just the greatest.
Yeah.
And I did with Burt. I went down. In fact, I directed a 2-hour movie.
Oh, really?
For Burt. Yeah, it was called BL Stryker. It was a
TV movie, you mean? Or,
it was it was like a Columbo, one of those things, 2-hour TV deal.
Yep.
We did like 2 years of those.
Wow.
And I did all kinds of stuff with him. I can't even remember all the stuff.
That's great.
But he and I just became good friends.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
And I used to stay at this place. He had this mansion.
Yeah.
in Jupiter, Florida, and then he had the ranch there. So it was back in those days. He had it all.
I'm sure it was like one of the biggest stars in the world.
Had
right?
his own jet.
Wow. Yeah,
We
back
had-
then that wasn't normal, right?
And he had his own helicopter.
Wow.
And
Amazing.
we would, on stick, we'd work out in the cane fields.
Mm-hmm.
And the guys would have to take them an hour going over these bumpy roads.
Yeah.
And we just jump in Bert's helicopter and
pop
beat him out
over
there.
Must be nice.
Yeah, it was great.
Is there a movie that you worked on, or a TV show, but probably a movie, I would imagine, that you think never got the credit it deserved? Like some movie you love that just never made it, or
Yeah, there was one that I did with Paul Newman.
Yeah.
Paul Newman directed it. He wasn't in it.
okay,
It was called The Shadow Box.
never heard of it.
Yeah,
Okay.
nobody ever heard
You
of it.
you were the operator? Or
I was
you-
the operator.
Okay.
But it was about people dying of cancer.
Oh, wow.
And that's why it never made it.
Sure.
But Paul was the director, and he was great to work with.
Was he?
and, Yeah. And it was a good movie, but it never made it because
Yeah.
of what it was about.
Who shot it? You remember?
A guy named Adam Hollander.
Oh, Adam Hollander. Right?
He shot Midnight Cowboy.
Yes, that's why I know his name.
And
Yep.
he's a very good friend of mine, just a great
Yeah.
guy. I did 2 or 3 movies with him.
Ah.
And he was, we used to just screw with him all the time. He was from Poland. He was Polish.
Okay.
And just a great guy. Just,
Cheech and Chong's next movie. You got to have some stories from that.
it was terrific. And the DP who kind of dropped out of sight was King Baggett.
King Baggett. Okay.
Yeah, he started as a news cameraman and somehow got the movie of it. One of those guys must have liked him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was the camera operator. It was great. They weren't big drug addicts. I think they smoked a lot of pot and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
But they were in shape. They loved to work out. And every Friday night after we'd wrap, we'd have a big party. The margaritas and it was just fun. It was
That's
just a
great.
great time. Yeah.
Location shows back then were basically just a constant party, right?
This was actually at Universal.
it was.
I think. Yeah.
But in
back
general, though, location
Oh
shows.
God, yeah. I'm not a big drinker anymore, but back in those days, oh my God,
Yeah. Were people drinking on set?
absolutely.
Really?
And you'd come in the morning. I remember first when I did work for my stepfather, you'd walk in the morning, that real whiskey breath, the grips and stuff. They all smelled like that.
Wow.
But that's kind of gone away, I think.
It's gone away. If it hasn't gone away, it's been pushed back to, it's not as
Yeah.
open as it was.
and drugs were a real big thing, but I never did drugs, so I was okay with that. But
Was it? I mean, I've heard the stories of the camera, the film tin going around with cocaine on it, and people just
absolutely.
really.
Absolutely. In fact, I told you about Julia Phillips, who's now has passed, but
Yes.
I lived with her for a couple of years.
Yeah.
She was a huge drug addict.
And there was a lot of people back then, right?
Yes.
It was. I mean, and was production buying this?
They had no choice, and
So production would literally buy cocaine for
no, but Julia would buy it. She
Oh,
was the
okay.
producer,
I
but
got
she
you.
would
Okay.
buy it,
Gotcha.
and then she would give it to her ADs, and they'd be all, they
And
had funny ways to do it. They would blow it on each other's mouth and stuff like that. But
Wow.
I told her one time, I said, you're nothing but a drug addict. She said, well, you're nothing but a wino, which is kind of true, kind of the truth.
It's a different world. There's no question.
She was
about
brilliant,
it.
too.
Wow.
She did 4 major movies,
Yeah.
and I can't think of the name of them now, but Close Encounters was like,
I mean, that's huge right
Yeah,
there.
not bad.
Absolutely. What were the hours like back then? Were they crazy?
horrible. But
Horrible.
they still are. Nick
They-
on Grey's
Yeah.
Anatomy, he works, 12, 14 hours days.
But weren't the unions? But weren't you getting crazy money for?
Yes.
Like, so you're just
but
making a lot
it didn't
more
matter.
money. Yeah.
In fact, on the Deer Hunter, I flew from L.A. to, I think Hong Kong, and then Hong Kong to Thailand.
Yeah.
I was on the clock the whole time.
Wow.
So once I was over 8 hours, it was triple time or quadruple time or something. But
Wow.
they didn't care back then.
That was just the way.
Yeah.
And that's why those movies cost as much
yes,
as they did.
yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Someone who's coming up as a camera operator now. They're starting out as a camera operator. You got any advice for them?
Just practice on the wheels, I think, is the best. It's not the same. Once you get there, it's a little different.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I used to always have problems when somebody would be running at you.
Yeah.
Their head would go
Veteran?
out. Or,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
But, yeah, you just practice. And I think the more agile you are, the more athletic you are, the better off you are.
Sure.
It's Yeah, I would just practice a lot, and I wouldn't move up unless you knew the DP was backing you. Because if the DP wasn't backing you, you wouldn't be around. I mean, if he wanted to get rid of you and have somebody else come in,
Yep.
that could be easily done.
Yeah.
But if you think the guy was backing you, or if the guy asked you to move up, then I think you have a real good shot.
What about advice for the politics of being an operator?
I just think you just have to play it straight. Talk to the director, talk to the DP, and you can pretty well figure out who's what and
Be smart.
Just be smart.
Yeah. Do you remember back when you were doing Close Encounters, back when you were doing all these great Being There and Deer Hunter and whatever? Were there, other than sort of makeup and hair and wardrobe, were there any women in any of the departments?
We had a couple gals in camera, but very few. I think two. Leslie Hill was one.
Was that rare?
Yes. Yeah, there wasn't anybody girls. I can't think of the other departments either. But yeah, but makeup and hair was.
Yeah. So you'd never seen a woman who's a grip.
I did towards when I started doing sitcoms.
Yeah, you started doing sitcoms.
Then some electricians.
Yeah.
And they were damn good too.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just they just didn't get the chances back then.
Exactly.
It's great that it's changed a little bit.
Yeah.
We were walking outside in Panavision over by they call it the Pana Bar, the coffee bar here.
Right.
And you saw all the cameras.
Right.
Tell me about the camera that you found there.
What I saw over there, and I heard that my name was on it, but I noticed I didn't see my name on it. But that was the first Panaflex that came from Panavision. And it was like it was like the Steadicam, actually.
Really?
It was, the PSR was this big and the Panaflex was
Massive.
this big.
Yeah.
And I remember when Jordan Cronenworth first saw the Panaflex, they said, how can we improve it? And Jordan says, give me a lens with a handle on it. I'll never forget that. But yeah, that was the first Panaflex. They sent one to me.
How many were there at that time?
Two, I think, maybe. But they sent one to me. And
on what movie?
On Sugarland Express. And one to Papillon.
Yeah.
And when I got mine, I gave, before I even used it, I gave it to Johnny Connors, who was my assistant, I believe, from Chicago. And he took it in an old barn, and we had 4 magazines, and I think 3 of them scratched.
Oh, wow.
So I sent those back immediately.
And there probably weren't that many magazines in existence,
no,
right?
And I don't think there was a 1,000-footer. I think there were 400-footer.
Oh, my gosh.
But maybe I had 2, but Ziegman said, screw it, let's use it. And we did some of the shots inside the car in Sugarland immediately.
Wow.
He wanted to use it right now, whether it scratched or not. He was just
amazing.
It was like your Steadicam.
And was that the first time you could put a 35mm camera up on your shoulder?
Absolutely. There was a this is a good story. There was a 35mm sound camera that was an Arri, but it had this long blimp tube. Did you ever see one of those?
Is it the BL1?
No.
Okay.
It was something before that.
Okay.
And you put the camera in there, and it was a long throat. You'd have to thread it up.
Oh, wow.
I hated it. And actually on Sugarland, one of the stunt gals who I was kind of seeing, I put the camera right at the end, and I told her, I said, if you run over that camera, I'll take you out to dinner. And she did. She bashed it. It was just just a pain in the butt. It just took forever to load it, and it was noisy, and it was this big.
Yeah.
I'll bet they have one around here somewhere in the archives. Or
yeah. So this was really unbelievably revolutionary. And was the optics better than any?
It was perfect. It was
Incredible.
just great. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So when you were given one of 2 in existence, did that freak you out? As if
No, I was pretty up on that stuff.
Yeah.
I just whatever makes it easier or better. I was
Gotcha. Now, Sugarland Express, I was reading, has something, and I don't remember. I saw the movie so long ago, but there was something about. It's the first time there was a car. There was a shot in a car that went from the back seat to the front seat, or something like that.
Well, that was probably when we had the Panaflex. It was probably when we would, the car would come up alongside, and we pan through the deal around to this. And I think I started operating from one deal, and I'd send it to Ziegman.
Oh, so it was a handoff.
Yeah.
And
But
did
it
you
was
close
on
the
a
eyepiece
tripod.
or something?
It was on a tripod.
It was on a tripod.
Yeah.
Interesting. Oh, wow, that's amazing. That's incredible. So you were basically using the first Panaflex that there was.
It was the first, yeah. Well, you saw it.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible.
And I had when this is how Panavision was in those days. When we sent the camera back, Gottschalk, the guy. Do you know who Gottschalk is?
The name sounds
He
familiar.
was the president of Panavision. He was
Okay.
the originator of
Oh,
Panavision.
okay, gotcha.
And he would call me up and say, "Tell me everything you would need on that camera to fix."
Yeah,
And there was like I built that little lens. Well, when I sent it back, I had a piece of cardboard. So, the sun would hit the meter, the
so
footage
you
meter.
could see it. You could see the footage
so
meter.
it would shade it.
So then they
built
recessed
that,
it a little bit. Yeah,
And then there was a deal where you could hit that thing in the back, the 24 frame thing,
yeah.
and this would get in there so you couldn't.
Oh,
move it.
those two little like knobs that come up and hold it in place,
Yeah,
so that
exactly. Yeah,
I see.
I kinda
But those are the
designed
things
that.
you don't know till you have it in real world, right? You don't think about them.
Right.
That's amazing. So, and you were also telling me that back then. Tell me what was Panavision like back then?
Well, we went to do Eddie Reel and I were going to be the assistants on McCabe and Mrs. Miller. And to do on Panavision, you were a big time assistant then. You got extra money and everything for
Really?
It was called, I forget, but you get like $1 more because you were you knew Panavision.
Yeah.
But it was in West Hollywood.
Okay.
There was one employee.
Really?
And we went there, and the cases were all lined up, and we loaded up. We thought we were the big shots.
That was the big deal.
Yeah, and I guess Zygmunt said, "I want to use Panavision,"
Yeah.
and that was it. But Panavision, I think, was just kind of starting then.
Sure, they must have been.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And then they moved over here, to the other building, I think.
Yeah, and then they got two, and they're on different coasts and whatnot. Do you remember the first time remote heads became sort of normal?
Yeah, I used on Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, I used the Luma for the first time.
Yeah.
And
Was Andy Romanoff with you?
I think he was.
Okay. What was that just mind-boggling what you could do with it?
Yeah,
What-
yeah.
Do you remember it worked well?
It worked great.
Yeah.
I remember the shot I did and everything.
What was the shot?
It was in front of the whorehouse, and Dolly was coming out.
Yeah.
And then we panned around, and actually Dolly too, I think.
And is it that there was be no other way to do that before that?
There probably was a way to do it,
Yeah.
but it was new stuff, and you want to get it,
Sure.
out there and use it.
Would you do that with like a Titan on a
Probably could
driving
do
a
it,
Titan
yeah.
or something
Yeah.
like that? Yeah, I was just
But the thing about the Luma, I think it had a video camera on it.
yeah.
Does that sound right?
I
think it had a video
It's a little
camera.
before my time. So in other words, because there was no video assist, there was a video camera essentially next to it, so it was like looking in parallax. So you were kind
Could
of
be.
guessing
Could
what
be.
it was
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. John Toll was telling me about the those whatever, I don't remember what camera it was, but with the rack over system where you had that
BNCR.
Yeah, the BNCR.
Yeah.
Where you had to actually adjust the eyepiece for
Yeah.
every lens and every.
And then you
focal.
had parallax. You had a viewfinder, and you had little cams you put in
cams.
there.
That's what it was.
And
yes.
you'd go, move this focus in and move the thing around.
It's incredible to me that anything was in focus and anything was in frame.
The first picture I ever did or big picture I did was, it was in Japan with Donnie Peterman, who was one of my best friends, the greatest guy ever. But we used a BNCR over there, and I can remember getting a few things that shouldn't be in the shot. But it was really cool. Really,
That's fantastic. What other shows did you work on that you haven't talked about that were just great?
I can't remember. In fact, I started looking at my IMBD
Yeah,
this
yeah,
morning, and I
yeah.
went, Jesus.
There's a lot, right?
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
impressive. It
Yeah.
just goes on
It
and
actually
on and
is,
on.
yeah.
It's a career.
I was impressed with myself.
Back when you were operating in these things with Vilmosh and Sugarland and this and that and the other, was it a small enough industry that kind of everybody knew each other?
God, I think it was in those
was,
days. Yeah,
yeah.
you kind of knew. Yeah, I
mean,
would
it's
say
just
so.
the more I talk to these people who came before me, like yourself, it's like it's sort of everybody just knew everybody, and people
I think
were
you're
just
right
starting
about
out.
that,
These
yeah.
people that I think are massive
Yeah.
people were
Yeah.
just starting out.
Yeah.
You know what? I actually wanted to ask you, Funny Lady.
Oh, a great story.
Yeah,
Great story.
I figured there's got to be good stuff. From that.
Great story. Well, we got in there, and we'd just come off something big, too, and I can't remember what it was. But Zygmunt and Barbara Streisand just didn't get along.
Oh,
And I remember we were pre-lighting her one day, and Vilmos asked her to sit down on this apple box or get up on something, and Streisand said, "What, the camera doesn't go up?" And I went, "Uh-oh." Oh, so we did this opening shot of, there's all black dancers, and the song was "It's Gonna Be a Great Day."
Okay.
I'll never forget the song.
Yeah.
So the next day we came in and everything was after we shot all day, and it was very quiet. And I saw him come in and take Zygmunt out the back door. They fired him right then and there. And when I saw dailies, all you could see of "It's Going to Be a Great Day" is their white teeth.
Oh, geez.
So it was under, and he could have got screwed, you know.
Yeah, yeah. You don't know what happened.
But in those days, he was force developing 2 stops and flashing and doing everything that Zygmunt did. Something could have gone wrong, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But then Jimmy Wong Howe, the great old cameraman, came in.
You worked with James Wong Howe?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And in fact, Mike Genie was there too.
How old was he at that point?
I don't remember. He was an old man. I was a kid.
That's amazing.
But they brought him in, and I had to stay there because his operator wasn't available. So I had to stay with him for like a week, stuff like that.
Wow.
So it was pretty interesting.
What was he like?
He was great.
Yeah.
But I remember Mike Genie, myself, Cal Roberts were all on it, another assistant, and we'd all just bought houses. And we all just had been fired, and we were walking off the lot together, and we were thinking, "Oh, geez, what's next?"
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. We only lasted a day on that.
Wow.
Or Zygmunt only lasted a day.
Wow.
It was fun.
That's incredible.
Really fun.
I mean, do you remember James Wong Howe coming in and you thinking, "Oh my gosh, this is James Wong Howe"?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was very impressive then too. You know,
Yeah.
he already won a couple of Academy Awards.
And was this at the time where they were still using like arc lights and whatnot?
Sure, I used arc lights on the Goonies. Yeah,
Really?
I had a bunch of arc lights on it.
And for people who may not know, explain what an arc light is.
Arc light was where you have a positive and a negative,
Yeah.
and you strike it, and the the charge, electrical charge, is what gives you the light.
So it's basically almost a fire inside this thing, right?
It is a fire.
And there was like a smokestack or chimney. Or
there
something.
was. Yeah.
So were the sets just unbearably hot?
No, because on the Goonies it was stage 16, which is, in fact, when they would yell lunch, we'd have to go 10 minutes early just to get the guys down off the grids.
Oh, gotcha.
It was like 100 feet up to those things. Yeah.
Well, the guys who were up there must have been burning up because all the heat went up there,
I
right?
took Julia, my producer friend, on Close Encounters up into the grids one time.
You couldn't pay me enough money to go.
And I said to her, "These are the guys that really are the hard workers."
Yeah.
She couldn't believe it.
Wow. Yeah. No.
In that, it was so hot there that they were all working in their underpants, and they had like ice up there, and
Oh my
it
gosh.
was horrible. It was tough.
That was a different time.
It was a different time, but it was worth it.
The Rose?
The Rose was actually the best helicopter shot I've ever done in my life.
What was it?
It was right on her last concert, and I had the best pilot at the time.
Was it her? This is Bette Midler.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she was on the stage, and it's where she has a drug overdose.
Such a long time since I've seen it, but
and it was, the shot starts. I was she's down on the stage down below, and it starts, and you hear the music going dun 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 dun, and all these people are going like this. And I came around.
There's a stadium full of thousands of people,
right? Which were paid.
So
extras.
And she was. I'm sure she probably did a little bit of a concert for him or something.
Oh, of course.
So, yeah.
And we did the whole shot coming around, and then I was on the back of her. Yeah. Doing it. It was a great helicopter.
Are you on a Tyler mount or something like that? Is that what
it was another. It wasn't the Tyler, but it was another one. I forget what.
But you're actually manually operating the camera.
Yeah. But I did a lot of helicopter work.
Yeah.
And then I got known for it, and I did a lot of commercials.
Oh.
For with my pilot
and did you get into that just because you're on a show and they want a helicopter? And
I don't know. I just liked the helicopter stuff. Oh, you know why? I'm thinking about it now. Don Morgan, who's still alive, a great DP.
Yeah.
The first show I was on, I remember I saw this helicopter land, and Don Morgan was the operator, and he got out, and I said to myself, I'm going to do that someday.
Really?
And that's, I think, really what started
really cool.
my helicopter work. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
I did a lot of it.
Yeah.
Especially on Beale Stryker and stuff. I did all kinds of helicopter stuff, which was great.
Yeah.
And I had my own pilot. Bert had a ranch foreman that he sent to helicopter school.
Oh,
but
wow.
he was real talented. And Bert had his own helicopter, so
Sure.
we could do any shot we wanted,
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was great.
Wow.
Wonderful.
And,
you know what I used to make?
What's that?
And I was the hottest camera operator, $25 an hour.
$25 an
Yeah.
hour. And that was a good, was $25 an hour what the union was paying, or you negotiated above the rate?
I think I negotiated above the rate. And
Yeah.
then I'd get a box rental, too,
Yeah.
in those days. And they
Was
would,
the box rental for something actually? Or
They
you
would
just got
ask me what's in the box, and I'd say these.
your hands?
And then you get like $200 or $300 extra.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And was it hard to make deals with the producers? Were they?
It depends on if they wanted you.
Yeah.
And it also, when you try and get your name, your credits on the deals, stuff
Yeah.
like that, you didn't get that until they wanted your name.
Ah.
And once they wanted your name for
Yeah.
to say we got a good crew here.
I got you.
Then you'd get it, but you wouldn't get it.
Wow. And what was the union beneficial to you back then? Was it tough?
Yeah, well,
Was
it had to be because he couldn't do anything without
Sure.
it.
But what about? I mean, as far as just what was the union like back then? Were you involved in it, or
Not at all.
just the same?
I've never
way?
been involved in anything. The only thing I really wanted to be in was the academy.
Yeah.
And once I got in the academy, I was, I didn't want to be in the ASC or that. But
You got in the academy for Friends or for television?
no,
or
I got in the real academy, film academy. And the interesting thing about that, I'd done a whole bunch of movies.
Yeah.
And then I started doing sitcoms. And then I applied to get in the academy, which is unlike me. But I wanted to get in, and they only vote like once or twice a year.
Okay.
And my key grip, I thought I was talking about. I said I don't think I got voted in, and my key grip was good friends with Conrad. He said, "Oh, you're in."
Yeah.
I talked to Conrad last night, and he said they voted you in.
Oh.
And that was the biggest. I think I got in '96 or something like that. But I really wanted to be a part of the academy.
That's pretty cool.
Have you seen the museum?
I haven't been yet, but what I
pretty
have
cool.
done, what I have done there, which I highly recommend, is they have a theater that is the nicest theater I've ever been in.
I don't think I got into that.
It's well, they have movies that they show which
Right.
you can get.
Right.
Well, you can
I'm
probably
a
get
member, actually.
Well, you're a member, so you can get it free. But so I went and saw. What did I see? I took my family and I went and saw Goodfellas there.
So you actually have been to the museum?
I've been to the theater. I mean, I've been to the building. I haven't been through the museum.
Oh, I see.
I
Okay.
need to go.
Right.
But what I was going to say was, it's a fantastic theater. They
Right.
have an actual projectionist who knows what he's doing.
Right.
And the bigger thing for me is, look, I obviously, like everybody else, I stopped going to movies during COVID. But the reality is I stopped.
Me too.
Yeah, but I stopped before that because I was so tired of people being on their phones and people talking and whatever. And the thing about the Academy Theater is everybody who's there wants to be there.
Oh,
Like,
I see.
So like
Yeah.
Goodfellas, I mean, I don't know if you know this, but Joe Pesci's mother is played by Scorsese's mother in the movie.
I didn't
She
know
actually-
that. Right.
And so when she came out, everybody in the theater clapped because they
wow.
knew who she was. I mean, these are
Wow.
people who love movies, so it really is.
You know,
it's
an
worth-
interesting thing
worth seeing.
in which I did the aerials and the right stuff.
We got to talk about the right stuff.
The when I was doing the aerials, my boss was Yeager, General Yeager. You know who he is?
Wait, you mean
He's the guy.
Chuck Yeager?
Yeah, he was my boss.
Because Chuck Yeager,
Yes.
no, he wasn't an astronaut. The test pilot.
He was never an astronaut.
You know,
Right.
there was a whole thing. That's what the whole movie's
But
about.
he
right?
did the aerials. Caleb had me go out and have lunch with him first to see what we were going to do.
The actual Chuck Yeager.
Yes.
One of the coolest people in the history of all time.
T-shirt and Levi's, and everybody was doing this. And I'd actually read his book. but
Wow.
He was.
What was he like?
He was great. He was just down to earth. I'll tell you a story about the studio made a mock-up to go under. Did you see the movie?
Yeah, are you kidding me?
Went underneath. It was supposed to be the thing that they released.
Yes. Oh, to
To-
drop the
to
plane.
break the- yeah.
What was the name of the plane that he broke the sound barrier in?
X1 or something
X1 or
like that.
something, yeah.
Anyways, so Chuck Yeager was there, and they brought this this plane, and they built at the studio.
Yeah.
And Chuck Yeager said, "Okay, somebody stand on this wing, and somebody get up on that wing." Boom, it broke. So and they were going to put it underneath the B-29.
So you're
or
saying
something.
he basically was stress testing it.
Yes,
yeah,
and
because
it broke.
because by the way, he's a test pilot.
Yes.
That's what test pilots
And he
do.
said, Yeager then said, "Okay, I want the FAA, I want Warner Brothers, I want this, and I want that. And when you get this act together, give me a call. And he walked out of the room. But, and
That's a test
what I
pilot
was getting
right there.
to on the right stuff,
Yeah.
he was in the movie. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
He played the janitor in the whatever that bar was that they all go to. Well, he played the janitor.
I can't believe I had no.
He was back there with a broom.
That's so great.
Isn't that great?
That's great.
And in fact, I was talking to somebody the other day. Oh, this guy from Ireland that came out.
Yeah.
Well, he knows everything there is about movies. I said,
Okay.
do you know that Yeager was in the... He said, yeah, he was doing the deal.
That's so great.
Yeah.
So did you just do aerials on the right stuff, or
No, I did the stuff in the Cow Palace.
you were operating on it?
Operating,
Okay.
yeah. We had about 5 cameras in that.
Yeah.
And then I think I did some other stuff. But yeah, I did. I had a Learjet, and I had a F1. Oh, no, I didn't have an F-105. I had a B-25
Wow.
that I had a Airy set up at the back.
Uh-huh.
And it was the one that the guy went out in that one movie down there and died. So I built this, when I go down the tube,
Yeah.
which there was no bubble, it was just my camera. I
You're
would
saying
hook-
the tube that it's almost like where the gunner would be. Normally.
Exactly.
Yeah. And now you
exactly.
put a
But
camera
they
there.
didn't. There was no plastic
Yeah,
there. It was just an Aeroflex and death. So yeah, but I would hook up to that.
And you're
thing.
sitting behind it.
Yeah.
Oh my
And
God.
then I would have communications with the F-104, and I'd tell the guy to rotate, and I'd be talking to the pilot.
Yeah.
And I'd be into a 250 on him, and as fast as I could zoom back, that fucking thing would go by.
Because it was just that fast.
I was that fast.
Wow.
And I would just, phew. And then I had a shot in there. I hate to keep talking.
No, I love
but
this.
there was a shot in there that they wanted me to do out of a Learjet because the camera was on the top of the Learjet.
Okay.
And we had to get in what he wanted to see, full pipe of the F-104, and they wanted him to hit the afterburner.
Yeah.
And the shot was he wanted to see it turn red.
Oh, you're saying the exhaust.
The
or
exhaust.
Whatever. Okay.
Yeah. And the pilot at the time was this Clay Lacey, this incredible pilot. He said, we can do it. But he says, as soon as he hits that afterburner, they're
gone.
going to knock us right out of the air.
And this is a movie pilot, or this is like an Air Force pilot?
No, this guy was just a private pilot.
Like a private pilot.
But
okay.
he was like the best known pilot.
Oh, so you're saying, in other words, to get a close enough shot of it, he would have to physically be so close to your plane that when he hits the afterburner,
Exactly.
it would knock your plane out of the sky or something like that.
Exactly, yeah. So I worried about that for weeks,
Of
knowing I
course.
had to do that shot.
Yeah.
But we did it. We got it done. And it wasn't that turbulent.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, you didn't do that unbelievable shot where Yeager's character comes walking out of the fire, did you?
No,
Okay.
I wish I did.
That is one of the greatest
Yeah,
shots of
you
all
mean
time.
when the thing crashes?
The thing crashes and he just
parachutes
comes,
out or something?
He comes, but then there's that I don't know 1,000mm shot where
Yeah.
everything is
No,
so
I didn't do
compressed
that.
and he
Wish I
comes
did,
walking.
yeah.
Oh, brilliant!
But Caleb
Brilliant.
thought I was this hot operator because I'd met Caleb when he was just like 19 or 20 years old.
Caleb Deschanel.
Yeah, and he was going then. I thought he was going to do it was like a high school deal or something because it was called the Black Stallion, and he was going over. And I helped him.
Where
finish.
was that?
It was in Sardinia, I believe.
Sardinia. Okay,
And then when he came back here, I helped him finish up a couple of scenes.
that's a beautiful movie.
Yeah.
Did you ever get to work with your son?
All the time. I couldn't keep him. He would, as soon as I'd get him, he'd get a better job and he'd be gone. So, but that's the kind of guy he is.
It was okay working together, though?
Oh, yeah, it was great. It was
Oh,
great.
that's
In
fantastic.
fact, I had him operating on Evening Shade, I think.
Oh, yeah? Burt Reynolds, right?
yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
And, he was on 2 or 3 of things, but he was always...
Charles Durning was in Evening Shade, right?
Charles Durning, I probably did 6 movies with.
So you know Charles Durning's deal with what he did in World War II,
Yes,
right?
I do. I know all about...
I was working with Jamie Cromwell.
Really?
And Charles Durning, I don't remember what show it was, anyway, but Charles Durning was a guest actor, and Jamie came over and said, he's the second most decorated,
Do you know
veteran.
that, you ever seen that scar he's got?
On his neck?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, there's a guy bayoneted him. No, he's told that story.
From what I understand, after Audie Murphy, he's the second most decorated.
he was at the D-Day, evidently, I think.
It's unbelievable.
But he was just a great guy.
Just a quiet, super quiet,
Oh,
nice
God.
guy, lovely man. I mean, but Jamie Cromwell came over and said that, and he told me sort of some stories about what Durning had done, and it's just like, you got to be
His
kidding me.
funeral was more of a military funeral than anything else.
Of course,
and
right?
had some people there that
Yeah.
that told a story
that had served with him.
Right.
Yeah, and actually I asked, because apparently, and I always thought this would be great to be in, apparently there's, I don't know if it still happens, there's one of these legendary poker games that happens every once in a while.
I've
with
heard
all
about
these
that.
old, and
Yeah.
Jamie Cromwell and Charles Durning. He told me a couple other people. I'm
Yeah.
like, you got to be kidding me. And he said, yeah, it's great. We don't
Angie
talk about
Dickinson's in
the
on that
business
deal.
at all. We just play poker and have
Yeah.
a good time.
Angie Dickinson's in on that deal.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And he was saying though, he said, yeah, he never talks about any of it, or talked
Yeah.
now about
Right.
any of his experiences. It was just
Just
it was
a
a different
great-
generation, right?
Just a great guy.
Yeah.
I'll bet I've done 5 movies with him.
What
And
other
then
movies did you do with him?
I did Stick. He was in Stick.
Okay.
He was in Whorehouse.
Oh, sure. Okay,
You know,
yeah,
he
of
did
course. He's the mayor or
that's
the governor
one,
or something.
Yeah, that's the one of the times that I used the Lumicrane.
Yeah,
On
yeah.
that when he did his
Oh, that was the
sidestep.
shot. Yep. Okay.
Dance a little sidestep. But yeah, I could go on and on. He was just great.
Yeah.
And you know, when we did that, he probably weighed 300 pounds.
He's a
And the
big guy.
Capitol had to be 100 degrees inside there.
Oh.
And he did that dance at least 10 times.
Yeah.
And he's an old vaudeville dancer too, so
Is that right?
Yeah.
I know he was a boxer as well, from what I
I
understand.
didn't know that,
Yeah,
but I
Jamie
know
told
he
me
was
he was a boxer.
quite
and
talented guy.
Just an amazing guy. And,
Yeah,
and
I
just,
agree.
And sort of the quietest, most sort of unassuming person.
And
right?
one of Bert's best friends.
This is a shot in the dark, but you never worked with Jerry Lewis, did you?
I took a class from him.
What class?
In my opinion, he didn't know what the hell he was talking about because I was just getting started.
Okay.
And he had this huge ego.
Okay.
And my wife's best friend was his secretary.
Okay.
And I heard he was going to do this class at Warner Brothers in a
Yeah.
classroom.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm in. I just want to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, yeah.
And actually what he would do is he said, I want you guys to go see this movie. Bring me the tickets. I'll pay you back for it, which was a pretty nice guy.
Okay.
But I asked him some stuff about depth of field and stuff like that. He had no freaking
Wait, sorry.
idea.
So this class was just about filmmaking in
Yeah,
general?
in general.
Was it at a school or?
It was at Warner Brothers.
Was it Warner?
But it was his deal. It was his ego, really.
Yeah, yeah.
He got a bunch of people in there talking about himself as well.
I got you. Okay.
And I went to about 3 or 4 classes, but once he didn't know, he couldn't tell me about depth of field and stuff like that. I said, I don't know.
Yeah.
He might be a great actor and a great comedian, but
Yeah.
I don't think he knows about that much.
Just
about
because you mentioned it earlier, I just want to understand it a little better. So you're saying that you would go home at the end of a day, and then Warner Brothers would call you up and say, tomorrow you're going to stage 12.
That was Universal.
Or Universal.
Yeah.
So
Right. They would either that or come down to what you were working on and tell you to report to stage,
So you'd be on stage 12 doing whatever, and
Yeah.
then the next day you'd come back to stage 12, and they go, no, you're not here. You're on stage 42
Right,
doing
right.
this other. And
Yeah.
you'd be with a totally different crew?
Absolutely.
And would you even know what it was?
Yeah, I think it said so on there was a sheet that you would go in at night, and it had all the cameramen.
At the end of your day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it would be in the little sign, they'd have your name in there.
So would the camera, the DP wouldn't necessarily have their own people for a lot of these things. They
For
just get-
maybe just second assistants and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Wow.
But yeah, it was a whole different system.
That's a different world.
Yeah.
And so you would have no idea what the story was or anything.
No.
So you're literally just going, okay, do I point
I
here and I
actually-
pan there and
I think was a second assistant for 6 months or more, and had never loaded a magazine.
because it all went to the
You put it in the truck, and they bring you back loaded magazine.
because there was a camera what do you call it, a camera room or camera department.
Yeah, they take it, unload it, and send it in. But I thought, Jesus, what if I get? And they always sent a couple of extra 1,000-footers in case you got to that. I thought, I get that. I don't even know what's inside the magazine.
You didn't even know how to do it.
No.
So John told me about he got a job on a TV show that I forget what it was called, The Rookies or something. I don't remember what it's called. But anyway, he said he was the second AC, and he said it was a formative experience for him because he didn't have to load mags. So all he did was he
Right.
kept some camera reports.
That's it.
And he he hit the sticks. And then he would stand by the DP and talk to the DP all day about
right.
about lighting. And he said
Right.
that's where he kind of
Right.
learned a lot of that
Right.
stuff. It was a different world. There's
Yeah.
no question about
Yeah.
it. Well, any other great actors that you work with, like the great old timers?
I didn't dislike any of them,
Yeah.
I mean, Warren Beatty was a jerk, but everybody knew that, It just. But I did a couple things with him, and we kind of became buddies.
Obviously,
In
yeah,
fact,
like-
he came on a set one time and left me a little note, which I forget exactly what the note was about, but
a
he
personal.
was great. Oh,
yeah.
I know. He came one time and, was sitting there and he says, Nick, he says, I think we have a mutual friend. I guess a gal that he was trying to bed down that was one of my old girlfriends.
Oh, okay.
So we kind of got close after that one. Yeah, I liked him.
That's
In fact, Buck Henry and I,
Buck Henry.
Jack Warden, and somebody else, before Warren built his house, he owned that property.
Okay.
And there was a tennis court there, so we were all tennis players, but Warren wasn't.
Yeah.
But we go up there and play tennis every weekend practically.
Wow.
Yeah, Jack Warden was a great guy.
Jack Warden was, I know the name, but why do I know Jack Warden? What did he do?
Let's see. Heaven Can Wait?
But he was a cinematographer, or he was?
No, Jack Warden was an actor.
Was an actor.
But in being there, he played the president.
Oh, I know who Jack
Remember-
Warden
yeah,
is. That's why
yeah,
I know who
great
he is.
guy.
Okay.
Great
Oh, that's
guy.
great. I'm going through my mental roll. You ever work with Cary Grant?
No.
No.
But I dated Diane Cannon, who was married to him, and
Yeah,
had
okay.
the kid, yeah.
You dated. You worked on a movie with Diane Cannon, or?
Yeah, I actually dated her.
Yeah, no, but I mean that's how you met on a
Yeah,
movie.
on Heaven Can Wait.
Oh, and Heaven Can Wait.
Remember,
Okay.
she was the wife or something like
Yep,
that.
yep, yep.
Beautiful gal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think she's like close to 90 now.
she's got to be.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I saw her on. She was a Laker fan, and I
Okay.
saw her on Lakers.
Jack Nicholson
Yeah,
worked with him.
never.
Never.
Oh, one shot. In fact, the shot was a handheld shot. I remember the DP was John Alonzo,
John Alonzo, sure.
and I had a handheld deal, and there was like 4 cameras in there.
Yeah.
But I got to laughing real hard, and I kind of screwed the shot up. But he was a great. I would have wished I could have worked with
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. It's
Paul Newman was the great one, though.
But you worked with him as a director. You worked with him as an actor.
No, I never did.
No.
But after we finished that movie, the rap party was at the Sagebrush Cantina,
Okay.
and we all got there, and he said, "Okay, you guys enjoy yourself, get drunk, and then come back into this other room,
Yeah.
and I'll show you what I really like to do for a living." And we went back there, sat down. It was all about Paul Newman racing.
Oh, okay.
And he was a
Oh,
real
I
good
forget he was a
sports
re-
car.
yeah.
Yeah, he was a real good driver.
So what he was showing you, what film
he-
of it or whatever?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was a whole like a documentary on it.
Wow. So, and as a director, I'm assuming he
was great.
He knew exactly
But
what he was
in
doing.
those days, I was making the big bucks,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember just before this great scene with Melinda Dillon was in it,
Mm-hmm.
and she goes crazy. Something happens, and she's all over the place, and he had like this.
Yeah.
And I remember he looked over at me. He said, "Now let's see whether you're really worth the big bucks." or
Because
not."
you were so tight. On,
Yeah.
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 And
And I did it.
Okay.
And I did. But I was scared the crap out of me. And in Exorcist too,
yeah.
with Richard Burton,
Jeez.
I would wear long sleeve shirts because I'd be like this waiting for.
You'd be shaking.
Yeah. If we didn't get it right, he'd start screaming at us.
Wow.
Yeah.
But hopefully that didn't happen that often.
Not that often.
Any other good Spielberg stories?
I remember I got him. He never knew how to ride motorcycles, and I raced for a long time. On Sugarland, we had a little motorcycle,
Okay.
and that I would go and get magazines and stuff like that. And I taught him how to ride it, and he was never off it.
Yeah.
Then from then on, he was on it. And then years later, on Friends, or I was doing a sitcom or something, and his stepdaughter was in this sitcom,
Okay.
and he came in, and with his wife, I forget what her name is,
Kate Capshaw back
Kate
then?
Capshaw, and I came over and said, "Hi, Stephen." And he said to Kate, "This is the guy that taught me how to ride a motorcycle." He didn't say anything about the camera operator. or anything,
That's
but
great.
he's a
That's
good
what
guy.
he remembers.
He's a good
And so
guy.
you did Close Encounters in Sugarland. Did you do anything else with him?
The Goonies.
Oh, The Goonies,
he's
of
in
course,
The
yeah, which he was
He was
producing.
the producer.
Yeah.
But every night, Dick Donner, who is my favorite director of all time,
Okay. Yeah.
the best of all time.
What aspect makes him the best?
He
of all?
just knew what he was doing. And he was
Yeah.
a good guy. He was funny. He was loud.
He's like the king of the '80s.
He was
I mean,
he was the king.
Yeah.
And every night we were first up in Astoria, we'd get a call. Dick would get a call, and I'd get a call from Spielberg, bitching about something.
Yeah.
A shadow here, or a this there, or that there. This didn't
About
matter.
dailies, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Dick said, he said, "I got this all figured out." The whole time we were up there, he would call and get. He said, "When I get back to town, or when we get back to Warner Brothers, I'm going to create a second unit and ask Steven to direct it." And we did. We never heard from him again.
Because you kept him busy.
It kept him busy, and he was happier than hell. And I got to say, a lot of the great stuff in that movie he did.
Sure. Look, he's a insanely talented storyteller.
Oh God, he's
Yeah.
just a great guy.
Wow.
He was great.
Well, listen, this was absolutely fantastic.
Well, I enjoyed it. I love talking about myself.
These stories are absolute gold, and the great thing is, I think there's a lot in there that really look. Younger operators are going to be entertained by it. There's no question, because I'm just sitting here and listening to it. But I think there's a lot to be had from it. So thank you so much for sharing.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it.
Wow, what an incredible conversation. That was personally just such a treat to sit down with Nick and hear about kind of the golden age when I was growing up, really, of operating in the film industry. So many amazing stories. Please make sure to check out the OP website, www.theop.io, specifically the podcast page for Nick, where you can see a video that I took of him at Panavision explaining the information about the camera they sent him on the Spielberg film. If you like the show, please throw us a 5-star rating and write up a review, and share us with your friends, because that's always a plus. And otherwise, we'll be back in a few weeks. So until then, thank you for listening.